HI. Welcome back to Wolf Heart Tales. Before we dive into tonight's story, holla that like button and join our pack by hitting subscribe, because this tale of sacrifice, forbidden bonds, and impossible choices will tear your heart apart before putting it back together. This is a story about what happens when duty and destiny collide, when you must choose between the mark you bear and the mate you're meant for. Tonight's journey spans 14 chapters of pure emotional intensity. Settle in, because we're about to explore the devastating beauty of a love that defies pack law, the sacrifice of a healer who risks everything for 3 lost pups, and the price of breaking sacred bonds to claim your true mate. Let's begin. Chapter 1. The Storm's Warning. The scent of feverfew and dried wolfsbane filled Thalia's lungs as she ground herbs in the medical wing, her hands moving with practiced precision. Outside, storm clouds gathered like bruises across the winter sky, heavy with the promise of violence. She should have been focusing on inventory, on the dwindling supplies that would barely see Emberclaw pack through to spring. Instead, her thoughts drifted to ice blue eyes and a voice she'd heard exactly once, 2 years ago. Stop, she commanded herself.
Stop thinking about him.
But the mark at her throat, Alpha Dax's claiming scar, pulsed with that familiar, bone-deep ache. It always did when she thought about Kieran, as if her body knew the mark was wrong, that the brand burned into her skin belonged to the wrong wolf. You're thinking about him again. Thalia's hands still. She didn't need to turn around to know Dax stood in the doorway, his presence filling the space with quiet authority. Her husband. Her alpha. The male she respected but would never love. I'm thinking about our feverfew shortage, Thalia lied, though they both knew the truth hung between them like smoke. The winter harvest was poor. We'll need to forage before the heavy snows hit. Dax moved into the room, and Thalia finally looked up. He was handsome in a severe way, sharp features, dark eyes that missed nothing, silver threading through his black hair despite being only 35. 3 years of political marriage had taught them how to navigate each other's boundaries, how to perform the dance of Luna and Alpha for their packs while maintaining careful emotional distance in private. The weather reports predict a historic storm, Dax said, his tone measured. Dangerous conditions, possibly deadly. I'm keeping all patrols close to packlands. Good. Thalia resumed grinding, the mortar and pestle providing a soothing rhythm. No one should risk the northern border in weather like this. Which is why I'm asking you not to go to the herb gathering tomorrow. Dax's voice held a note of resignation. Even though I can see that determined look on your face that says you're planning exactly that. Thalia's jaw tightened. There was a patch of winter root near the contested border, rare, medicinal, vital for treating the elder wolf's joint pain. It only grew during the first freeze, and once heavy snow buried it, they'd lose access until spring. We have barely enough supplies to last, she argued, meeting his gaze. I've been navigating those woods since I was a pup, Dax. One storm won't. One storm killed 3 wolves last winter. Alpha command crept into his voice, subtle but unmistakable. I'm not losing my Luna to stubbornness. The words settled uncomfortably between them. Thalia was his Luna in title, in mark, in the eyes of both their packs. Their marriage had united 2 influential territories, satisfied their families' political ambitions, and secured trade agreements that benefited hundreds of wolves. But they both knew the truth. She wasn't his, not really. And he wasn't hers. Somewhere out there, Dax had his own true mate, a she-wolf he'd met before their arranged union, someone he refused to discuss, but whose memory haunted him in unguarded moments. They'd both made the same sacrifice, accepting marks meant for others, burying mate bonds that screamed against every law of nature. I'll be careful, Thalia said finally, her voice softening. Early morning, before the worst hits. I'll take warriors and the emergency beacon. If conditions deteriorate, I'll turn back immediately. Dax studied her face with those 2 knowing eyes. Then he sighed, the sound heavy with years of compromises neither of them wanted to make. Take 2 of our best warriors. Marcus and Saren. They'll slow me down. Take 2 warriors. Pure alpha command now, brooking no argument. Or don't go at all. Thalia wanted to fight him. wanted to rage against the careful control they both maintained, the way duty strangled every genuine impulse. But she recognized when Dax had drawn his line.
Fine.
2 warriors. Early morning. Back before noon. Before noon, Dax agreed. He moved closer, and for a moment his hand hovered near her shoulder, then dropped. Physical affection between them was rare, performative when it happened. And Thalia? Come back. Please. The plea hurt more than the command, because it reminded her that Dax did care. Not with mate bond intensity, not with passion or desperate need, but with genuine concern born from 3 years of partnership. They were allies. Friends even. 2 wolves trapped in the same gilded cage, pretending the bars didn't exist. I will, she promised. After Dax left, Thalia returned to her herbs, but her hands shook slightly as she worked. The mark at her throat burned hotter, and she knew it was because she'd been thinking about Kieran again. 2 years since that treaty meeting. 2 years since their eyes had met across a neutral council chamber, and the mate bond had struck like lightning. Immediate. Undeniable. Impossible. Because Thalia had already been marked. Already claimed. Already bound to Dax by magic and ceremony and political necessity. And Kieran, Alpha King Kieran of Frost Peak Kingdom, had been there representing his territory, his recent widowerhood still fresh enough that other alphas watched him with pity. A single father of 3, devastated by loss, barely holding his kingdom together. The bond had hit them both simultaneously. Thalia had seen it in his face. Shock, recognition, and something that looked like grief. They'd frozen, the mate bond screaming between them while their respective positions made acting on it utterly impossible. Since then, they'd avoided each other with surgical precision. No more treaty meetings where they might cross paths. No border patrols anywhere near shared territory. No contact that might make the bond pull harder than they could resist. But Thalia felt him anyway. Through the bond that shouldn't exist, through the connection that defied the mark burned into her throat, she felt Kieran's presence like a second heartbeat. Felt his emotions bleeding through in quiet moments. Loneliness, determination, grief that never quite healed. And underneath it all, the same aching want she felt every time she closed her eyes. Ice blue eyes. A voice like gravel and silk. Hands that looked like they could break worlds or hold them together. The mortar slipped from Thalia's grip, clattering against the table. She pressed her palms flat against the wood, breathing carefully through the pain radiating from her throat. The mark always hurts worse when she lets herself think about him. As if her body knew it bore the wrong alpha's claim and was trying to reject it. Tomorrow, she thought. Gather the winter root, come back, and bury yourself in work until you forget his name again. Except she never forgot. Couldn't forget. Because fate, it seemed, had a cruel sense of humor, giving her a true mate she could never claim, while binding her to an alpha who belonged to someone else entirely. Outside, the first snowflakes began to fall. Chapter 2. Into the Storm. The storm hit 2 hours earlier than predicted. Thalia had left Emberclaw territory at dawn with Marcus and Saren flanking her, all 3 wolves moving swiftly through familiar forest paths. The snow had been light then, gentle flakes drifting through bare branches, beautiful rather than threatening. Now, barely 30 minutes into their journey, the wind shrieked like a living thing. Luna, we need to turn back. Marcus shouted over the howling gale, his hand raised to shield his face from snow that fell so thick it formed a white wall.
Visibility is gone.
This is getting dangerous fast. 5 more minutes, Thalia called back, her healer's instincts overriding caution. The winter root patch is just ahead. I can see the rock formation. The sound cut through the storm.
Hi.
Terrified. Distinctly young. A child crying. All 3 wolves froze, their enhanced hearing catching what human ears would have missed. Thalia's heart stuttered in her chest. There shouldn't be any pups out here. The northern border was contested territory, dangerous even in fair weather. No pack would send children into these woods. Did you hear that? Saren's warrior instincts kicked in immediately, her hand dropping to the silver blade at her hip. The cry came again. Multiple voices this time, small and scared and growing harder to distinguish from the wind. Children. Thalia breathed, already moving toward the sound. There are children out here. Luna, wait. Marcus grabbed her arm, his grip firm. This could be a trap. Rival packs have used distress calls before to lure. Those are real children crying. Thalia wrenched free, her healer's oath burning bright in her chest. I'm not debating this. Find them.
Now.
She ran toward the cries, her warriors cursing behind her, but following nonetheless. The snow deepened with each step, her boots sinking into drifts that reached her knees. The cold bit through her heavy cloak, but Thalia barely noticed. Children. Lost in this storm. They'd be dead within the hour. They found the pups huddled beneath a fallen tree, 3 small forms pressed together in a desperate attempt to share warmth. 2 boys and a girl, none older than 7. They wore dark blue and silver, colors that made Thalia's breath catch. Frost peak colors. Kieran's colors. Please help. The eldest boy managed through chattering teeth, his dark hair plastered to his skull with snow. We got separated from our patrol. There was an avalanche, and we ran, and we got lost and… Sure, you're safe now. Thalia dropped to her knees beside them, her healer's training overriding the chaos of her thoughts. Hypothermia. All 3 were showing advanced signs, blue lips, violent shivering, confusion clouding their young eyes. She looked at the eldest boy and saw Kieran's stubborn jawline, looked at the girl and found ice-blue eyes staring back at her, his eyes. The youngest boy was tiny, shaking so hard his teeth chattered like stones rattling in a cup. Kieran's children. The mate bond flared hot in her chest. Protective instincts, she had no right to feeling screaming that these pups needed her. That they were hers to protect. Even though they weren't. Even though they belonged to a mate she could never have. What are your names? Thalia asked gently, already assessing their conditions with practiced efficiency. Stellan, the eldest whispered. This is Phoebe and Jasper. Kieran's children. The thought kept repeating, impossible to escape. Marcus, Saren. Thalia's voice cut through the storm with Luna's command. We need shelter immediately. They're hypothermic. We have maybe 20 minutes before they start shutting down. The storm's getting worse. Saren looked around, her expression grim. We'll never make it back to Emberclaw in these conditions. And Frost Peak is even farther. There's a cave system near here, Thalia said, already lifting little Jasper into her arms. He was barely conscious, his small body ice-cold against her chest. Old ruins from before the territory wars. It's not much, but it'll block the wind.
Move. Now.
They ran through the blizzard, Thalia cradling Jasper while Marcus carried Stellan and Saren supported Phoebe. The world had become nothing but white, snow above, below, surrounding them in a suffocating blanket. Thalia followed instinct and memory, praying she remembered the path correctly. One wrong turn, and they'd all be dead. The ruins appeared like ghosts through the snow, crumbling stone walls and a partially intact roof, remnants of some ancient structure long since reclaimed by the forest. It wasn't much, but it was shelter. Inside, Thalia commanded, stumbling through a gap in the stones. Get them inside. The interior was marginally better. The roof blocked most of the snow, and the walls provided protection from the wind's worst fury. But it was still brutally cold, and 3 small pups were already dying. We need fire, Thalia said, laying Jasper down carefully and examining each child with growing dread. Marcus, check for dry wood, anything that might burn. Luna. Saren's voice was careful, controlled. Those are Frost Peak pups. Alpha King Kieran's children, unless I'm very mistaken. The unspoken question hung in the frozen air. What are we doing saving the enemy Alpha's heirs? Then tell Alpha Dax when we return. Thalia snapped, rubbing warmth into Phoebe's small hands. Right now, there are 3 hypothermic children who need medical attention. Their pack affiliation doesn't change that. It changes everything, Marcus said quietly. If we're found with Alpha King Kieran's children, then we're found saving them from a blizzard. Thalia's voice carried pure Luna authority. I'm not leaving children to die because of pack politics. Is that understood? Both warriors nodded, though neither looked happy. Marcus managed to coax a small fire from sheltered wood and his emergency flint. The flames helped, but weren't enough. Not for 3 pups who'd been exposed to killing cold for far too long. Thalia worked with desperate efficiency, using every trick her healer's training had taught her. But as minutes stretched into an hour, then 2, she watched the children deteriorate despite her efforts. Jasper was the worst. His shivering had progressed to dangerous stillness, the moment when the body begins shutting down to preserve core functions. He'd be dead within the hour if something didn't change. Tell me about your papa, Thalia whispered, holding Jasper against her chest and sharing her body heat. She needed to keep him conscious, keep him fighting. What's he like? Strong, Jasper breathed, his voice so quiet she had to strain to hear. He's the strongest alpha in the whole world. And he gives the best hugs. And he makes funny voices when he reads us stories at night. Thalia's chest tightened painfully. She'd known Kieran was a father, had felt his grief through the bond when she'd learned his mate died, but knowing and seeing were different things. These weren't just the Alpha King's heirs. They were 3 children who loved their papa and needed him desperately. He sounds wonderful, Thalia managed.
He's sad, though.
Stellan spoke up from where he huddled with Phoebe, his young face far too serious. Since Mama died. He tries to hide it, but we know. We can see it in his eyes sometimes. I miss Mama, Phoebe added, her small voice breaking. Papa says she's watching us from the moon now, that she's always with us, even when we can't see her. Thalia blinked back tears. She shouldn't be here, shouldn't be holding Kieran's children, listening to them talk about their lost mother and grieving father. Shouldn't be feeling this overwhelming pull of connection and protection. But the bond mate didn't care. It screamed at her to protect these pups, to keep them alive no matter the cost. Your mama would be very proud of you, Thalia said, hugging Jasper tighter. All 3 of you have been so brave. Are you someone's mama? Jasper's small hand clutched at her shirt. You feel like a mama. The question pierced her like a blade.
No.
She wasn't a mother. She and Dax had agreed early in their marriage that bringing pups into a loveless bond wouldn't be fair to anyone. Thalia would never have children, unless the impossible happened and the mate bond she couldn't acknowledge somehow became real. No, little one, she whispered. But I'm a healer, and I promise I'm going to get you home to your papa safely. I promise. The storm worsened. Marcus's fire died despite his best efforts, the wind too vicious, and the wood too wet. Saren used her body to block the entrance, but snow still drifted through gaps in the ancient stone. The temperature dropped steadily. Their breath became visible even in the enclosed space. Luna. Marcus's voice was grim. We need to make a choice. If we stay here, we're all at risk. But if we try to move 3 small pups in these conditions, we stay. Thalia's decision was immediate and absolute. Moving them now will kill them faster. We stay and keep them warm until either the storm passes or help arrives. And if help doesn't arrive? Saren asked quietly. Thalia looked down at the 3 small bodies huddled together, at Jasper unconscious in her arms, at Stellan's ice-blue eyes watching her with heartbreaking trust.
Then we stay anyway, she said.
We don't leave children to die. That's not who we are. But as the hours crawled past and the cold became unbearable, Thalia realized staying might not be enough. All 3 pups were showing signs of advancing hypothermia, confusion, lethargy, breathing so shallow it was barely detectable. Marcus and Saren did their best, but even trained warriors had limits. And Thalia herself was beginning to shake, her fingers numb, her face aching from the cold. They need more warmth, she said, her voice tight with fear. More than we can give them like this. What do you want us to do? Marcus looked as scared as she felt. Luna, we're doing everything we can. Thalia stared at her heavy winter cloak, at the extra layers she'd worn for the journey, at her 2 warriors who were already giving everything they had. Then she looked at 3 small pups who were dying because she hadn't given enough. The choice was obvious. Marcus Saren. Her voice was steady despite the fear coursing through her. Move the pups together as close as possible. I want them to share maximum body heat. She removed her cloak and wrapped it around all 3 children. Removed her outer tunic and added that to the pile. Removed every layer until she was down to the barest minimum, her body immediately screaming in protest against the cold. Luna, no. Saren grabbed her arm desperately. You'll freeze. They'll die. Thalia pulled free and climbed into the huddle of pups, wrapping her body around them, sharing what warmth she had left. Better me than 3 children. Alpha Dax will kill us if you die protecting Frost Peak pups, Marcus said, his voice breaking. Then don't let me die. Thalia pressed her face against Jasper's hair, feeling how cold he was, how still. Keep watch. If the storm breaks, get them to Frost Peak territory immediately. Tell Kieran, her voice caught. Tell Alpha King Kieran his children were brave. That they fought hard. That they're worth saving. You're going to tell him yourself, Saren said fiercely. You're not dying here, Luna. But Thalia could feel her body shutting down. Could feel hypothermia setting in, her thoughts growing fuzzy, her shaking intensifying until it hurt. The pups were warmer now, nestled in her cloak and pressed against her body. Their breathing steadied fractionally, their color improved by degrees. She was dying, but they were living. That was enough. There's a lullaby, Thalia whispered, her lips barely working. My mother used to sing it, about the moon watching over lost pups, finding them in the dark, bringing them home. She sang it, her voice breaking and fading, the words slurring together as the cold grew deeper and her body grew heavier. The last thing she heard before darkness claimed her was Stellan's small, terrified voice. Don't leave us. Please don't leave us. She couldn't promise she wouldn't. Chapter 3. The Bond Screams. Kieran felt the exact moment something went catastrophically wrong. The mate bond he'd been suppressing for 2 years suddenly blazed with terror and pain and the sharp, unmistakable certainty of dying. Not his emotions, hers. Thalia's. His mate who wasn't his, who belonged to another alpha, who he'd been trying to forget for 24 agonizing months. She was dying. Alpha King. His beta, Valen, stepped forward, concerned etching lines across his weathered face. They were in the command center coordinating search efforts for Kieran's 3 missing pups. The avalanche had separated them from their training patrol 4 hours ago, and every available warrior was out searching despite the blizzard. What's wrong? You look. She's dying. Kieran's voice was hollow, stripped of everything but raw truth. My mate is dying. Valen's eyes widened. In all their years of friendship, through war and loss and rebuilding, Kieran had never spoken those words aloud. Your mate? Since when? Who? Luna Thalia of Emberclaw Pack. The admission tasted like failure, like 2 years of denial finally crashing down. We met at a treaty meeting. The bond hit immediately, except she was already marked by Alpha Dax. Already claimed. So I buried it and tried to pretend biology hadn't just destroyed my life a second time. Kieran's hands clenched into fists on the table before him, his claws extending involuntarily. The bond pulsed again, weaker now, flickering like a candle in a hurricane. Alpha King Valen began, but Kieran was already moving. She's dying right now. I can feel it through the bond. He grabbed his heavy winter coat, his wolf already surging beneath his skin, demanding to be released. And he stopped, hit by a wave of emotions so strong it staggered him. She's scared but also determined.
Protecting something.
Fighting to stay alive for. Realization struck like lightning. She found them. Kieran's voice dropped to a whisper. She found my pups. How could you possibly know that? Valen demanded. Because the emotions I'm feeling aren't just fear and pain. Kieran was already stripping off his clothes, preparing to shift. They're maternal. Desperation to keep small things alive. Willingness to sacrifice everything for. His voice broke. She found my children, and she's dying trying to keep them safe. He didn't wait for Valen's response. His human form dissolved, bones reshaping, muscles reforming, until the massive black wolf marked with silver, the distinctive pattern of an Alpha King, stood in the command center.
Kieran ran.
He burst through the doors and into the blizzard, following the bond like a rope pulling him north, into contested territory where Emberclaw and Frost Peak borders blurred, into weather that would kill most wolves but barely registered to an Alpha King running on pure instinct and desperate fear. She was marked by another alpha, claimed by Dax. Impossible to have even if Kieran wanted to acknowledge the bond, which he'd spent 2 years trying not to. But she was dying, and she'd saved his children. And the mate bond didn't care about politics or previous marks or anything except the certainty that his other half was slipping away. Kieran ran faster, his powerful legs eating up ground, snow flying in his wake. The bond grew weaker with each passing minute, Thalia's life force dimming to almost nothing. Hold on, he thought desperately, knowing she couldn't hear him but praying anyway. Just hold on. I'm coming. The storm tried to blind him, but Kieran navigated by instinct and the bond's pull.
North.
Always north. Toward the ancient ruins near the contested border, toward 3 small heartbeats and one that was barely there at all. He found them by following the bond and the faint scent of his pups beneath the heavy snow. The collapsed stone structure was nearly invisible, buried under drifts that reached halfway up the crumbling walls. 2 Emberclaw warriors stood guard at the entrance, their faces haggard with cold and fear. Alpha King Kieran. The female warrior's shock was visible even through the snow caking her features. Your children are inside. They're alive. But our Luna. Kieran was already pushing past them, shifting back to human form as he ducked through the gap in the stones. His bare skin barely registered the cold. All his focus locked on the scene before him. 3 small bodies huddled under a cloak, dark shapes against white snow that had drifted through gaps in the roof. Stellan, Phoebe, and Jasper were alive. He could see their breath, hear their heartbeats, feel their small bodies warm beneath the fabric. And surrounding them, holding them with the last fragments of her strength, was Thalia. She wasn't moving. Her skin had taken on a blue-white tint, lips nearly purple, breathing so shallow Kieran had to strain to detect it. She'd stripped down to almost nothing, given every piece of warmth she had to keep his pups alive. The mark on her throat stood out stark against frozen skin, another alpha's claim that should have prevented this. Should have stopped her from caring about Frost Peak's heirs. But she'd saved them anyway. Sacrificed herself for 3 children who weren't hers, who belonged to a mate bond she couldn't acknowledge. How long has she been unconscious? Kieran demanded, already pulling off his coat to wrap around her. His hands shook from cold or fear. He couldn't tell. 15 minutes. Maybe 20. The male warrior, Marcus, if Kieran remembered correctly, looked devastated. We couldn't stop her. She kept saying the pups needed warmth more. Kept giving them everything until she had nothing left. Kieran lifted Thalia carefully, his touch reverent despite the terror clawing at his chest. She was ice in his arms, her body temperature dangerously low, her heartbeat weak and irregular. Your Luna just saved my children's lives at the cost of her own, he said quietly, looking at the 2 Emberclaw warriors. We need to get her back to Emberclaw, the female warrior, Saren, said urgently. Alpha Dax won't reach her in time. Kieran's medical knowledge was limited, but even he could see Thalia was minutes from complete shutdown. None of us will. Frost Peak is closer. I have healers who can... She's marked by Alpha Dax, Marcus interrupted, stepping forward. You can't just take another Alpha's mate. I can if it's the difference between her living and dying. Pure Alpha command rolled through the space, making both warriors instinctively bare their throats in submission. And I will. My pack. My healers. My responsibility, since she saved my children. He looked at his 3 pups, still unconscious but alive, and felt his throat tighten with emotions he couldn't name. Bring them, Kieran ordered. All of them. We're moving now. Alpha Dax will consider this an act of war, Marcus said, but his voice held resignation rather than argument. Then let him. Kieran was already moving, Thalia cradled against his chest, the mate bond screaming with her fading life force. He's going to have to go through me to get to her. And I'm not losing my mate twice. The admission hung in the frozen air. Both Emberclaw warriors stared at him with shock and something that might have been understanding. You're her true mate, Saren said quietly, not a question. We wondered. The way she looked sometimes when someone mentioned Frost Peak. The way Alpha Dax never. She cut herself off. Take her. Save her. We'll bring the pups and deal with the political fallout later. Kieran didn't wait for more discussion. He shifted again with Thalia still in his arms, a trick few alphas could manage, requiring absolute control and devastating strength. His wolf form cradled her carefully as he ran for Frost Peak territory. Don't let me lose her, he prayed to whatever gods might be listening. Not when I just found her. Please don't let me lose her. The mate bond pulsed weakly in response, a fragile thread connecting him to the female who'd saved his children and might not survive the night. Frost Peak's medical wing was already prepared when Kieran burst through the doors. His head healer, Kala, took one look at the unconscious female in his arms and started barking orders. Severe hypothermia. Looks like she's been exposed for hours. Get heated blankets, warm water baths, cardiac monitors. Move. Kala's hands were already checking vitals, her expression grim. Alpha King, when did she lose consciousness? 15, maybe 20 minutes ago. Kieran laid Thalia on the medical bed as gently as he could, his hands trembling. She was protecting my pups. Gave them all her warmth. By the time I found them, she was already dying. Kala finished bluntly. Her core temperature is dangerously low. Heart rate is erratic. If she'd been out there another 10 minutes, we'd be planning a funeral instead of treatment. She paused, her sharp eyes catching on the mark at Thalia's throat. Alpha King, Kala said carefully. She's marked by someone else. I know. Then you also know that treating another alpha's marked mate without permission is the difference between her living and dying. Kieran's voice dropped to Alpha Command. Save her, Kala. Deal with political complications after. Kala held his gaze for a long moment, then nodded. Everyone out except essential medical staff. Alpha King, that includes you.
No.
Kieran's hand found Thalia's, the mate bond flaring weakly at the touch. I'm staying. You're going to be in the way. I'm staying, Kieran repeated, his tone leaving no room for argument. He stopped, the admission caught in his throat. She's your mate, Kala said quietly. I can smell it on you. On her. The bond is unmistakable. Her expression softened slightly. But Alpha King, she's marked by another. That complicates everything, medically and politically. I don't care about complications. I care about her surviving. Then let me work. Kala's tone was firm, but not unkind. Sit in the corner, stay quiet, and don't interfere. Understood? Kieran moved to the corner, his eyes never leaving Thalia's too-still form as Kala's team worked with practiced efficiency. They stripped away her frozen clothing, replacing it with heated blankets. Submerged her hands and feet in carefully temperature-controlled water to restore circulation. Attached monitors that beeped warnings about her dangerously low heart rate and unstable vitals. Through it all, the mate bond stayed weak and flickering. Thalia's emotions barely present, her life force dimmed to almost nothing. Valen appeared in the doorway. Alpha King. The pups. Are they alive? Yes, Kieran said without looking away from Thalia. Hypothermic, but stable. Healer Linnea is treating them. The Emberclaw warriors are here. They're asking about their Luna. Tell them she's being treated. That I'll update them when I know more. Alpha King, there's more. Valen's voice was careful. Alpha Dax has been contacted.
He's on his way.
Should arrive within the hour. Of course he was. Kieran had essentially kidnapped another Alpha's mate, even if his intentions were purely medical. Dax would be well within his rights to demand Thalia's return, to challenge Kieran for the insult, to declare this an act of war. But Kieran would fight every Alpha in existence before he let Thalia die because of political protocol. When he arrives, bring him to my office, Kieran said. Not the medical wing. My office. I'll handle Dax. And if he demands to see Thalia immediately, then he'll have to go through me first. Kieran's eyes finally left Thalia long enough to meet Valen's gaze. I know the political implications. I know what this looks like. But she saved my children, Valen. Saved them at nearly the cost of her own life. I'm not letting protocol kill her when I have the means to save her. Valen nodded slowly. The pack is asking questions. About why their Alpha King brought home a marked Luna from a rival pack. About the 3 pups who are calling for the nice lady who kept them warm. About what happens next. What happens next is she survives, Kieran said, his voice hard as stone. Everything else is secondary. The hours crawled past. Kieran sat in that corner, watching Calla work, feeling the mate bond pulse weakly with Thalia's struggling life force. His pups were brought to him briefly, all 3 alive and recovering, asking about the female who'd saved them. But Kieran could barely focus on their questions. She's your mate, isn't she, Papa? Stellan asked, his ice blue eyes too knowing for a 6-year-old. The nice lady. I could feel it, the way you looked at her. It's complicated, Kieran managed. Because she belongs to another alpha, Stellan said wisely. But she's supposed to be ours. I can feel it too. She feels like she should be here with us. Sometimes what should be, and what is our different things? Kieran pulled his son close. But you're right. She does feel like she should be ours. She just can't be. Why not? Because she made a promise to someone else before she knew we existed. And promises matter, Stellan. But even as he said it, Kieran wondered if some promises were meant to be broken, especially when keeping them meant slow death for everyone involved. She saved us, Papa, Phoebe whispered from his other side. She could have left us to die, and she didn't. That has to mean something. It means everything, Kieran said roughly. It means she's exactly as brave and selfless as I knew she was. And it means I owe her a debt I can never repay. You could keep her, little Jasper offered drowsily. Make her stay with us. Then she'd be safe. That's called kidnapping, little one. And it's wrong. Even if it keeps someone alive. Even if we want her to stay? Jasper's voice was fading as exhaustion claimed him. Kieran looked at his 3 pups, alive because of Thalia's sacrifice, and felt his heart break in new ways. Even then, she belongs to someone else. We can't keep her just because we want to. But the mate bond disagreed, pulling insistently toward the medical wing where Thalia fought for her life. Insisting that she was his had always been his, that the mark on her throat was a lie written by politics instead of destiny. Her temperature is stabilizing, Calla announced hours later, relief flooding her voice. My heart rate is improving. Circulation is returning to her extremities. I think. She paused, checking monitors with shaking hands. I think she's going to make it. Kieran was on his feet before she finished speaking. When will she wake? Could be hours. Could be days. Her body's been through severe trauma. It needs time to recover. Calla's expression turned cautious. But Alpha King, when she does wake, we need to address the complication. What complication? The mark. Calla gestured to Thalia's throat. She's claimed by Alpha Dax, marked and bonded. But I can smell your mate bond with her. Feel it in the air between you. Those 2 things shouldn't coexist. They don't coexist well, Kieran said quietly. I've felt it for 2 years. The bond pulling me toward her while her mark pushes me away. He searched for words. It's agonizing. Like being torn in half constantly. For you, yes, Calla said gently. But for her, Alpha King, a marked mate feeling a true bond with someone else causes physical pain. The mark fights the bond. Her body has been in constant conflict for 2 years, trying to reconcile impossible biology. That kind of sustained stress weakens immune systems, causes chronic pain, and can eventually lead to serious illness. Horror dawned in Kieran's chest. Are you saying the mark is killing her? I'm saying having 2 competing bonds is unsustainable. Eventually, something has to give. Calla met his eyes steadily. Either she breaks the mark with Alpha Dax, which is dangerous and potentially fatal, or she rejects the true mate bond with you, which is emotionally devastating and rarely successful, or she continues as is until her body can't handle the conflict anymore. How long? Kieran's voice was barely above a whisper. If she doesn't choose, how long does she have? Months. Years. I can't say for certain. Kala moved closer, her expression grave. But Alpha King, she's already weakening. I can see it in her vitals, in the way her body responded to the hypothermia. She should have recovered faster, should be stronger. The competing bonds are draining her. Then we break Dax's mark. The decision was immediate, absolute. If that's what saves her, we do it. It's not your decision to make, Kala said firmly. Breaking a mark requires consent from the marked individual. And even with consent, it's incredibly dangerous. The mark is magic and biology intertwined. Removing it forcibly can cause shock, seizures, even death if done improperly. But can it be done? With proper precautions?
Yes.
But Alpha King, Kala held his gaze. It also requires consent from the Alpha who placed the mark. Alpha Dax would have to willingly release her. Otherwise, breaking it becomes exponentially more dangerous. Then I'll convince him to release her. You think he'll just let go of his Luna? Give up his mate to a rival Alpha? She's not his mate, Kieran said, the words coming out harder than he intended. She's mine. Dax marked her through political arrangement. I'm bonded to her through destiny. There's a difference. Tell that to the mark that's literally written into her skin, Kala said. But her expression wasn't unsympathetic. Look, I understand the situation is complicated. But you need to be prepared for the possibility that she chooses to stay with Dax. That she decides her duty and her mark matter more than a mate bond she never asked for. Then I'll accept her choice. The words tasted like lies, but Kieran forced them out. But I'll make damn sure she knows all her options first. That she understands staying with Dax while bonded to me is slowly killing her. That there is another way, even if it's difficult. And if she chooses you? Kala asked quietly. If she wants to break Dax's mark and accept your bond? Then I'll fight anyone who tries to stop her, Kieran said, his voice quiet but absolute. Including Dax himself, if necessary. Kala nodded slowly. For what it's worth, Alpha King, I think she already chose you. The moment she sacrificed herself to save your pups instead of protecting herself. That was mate instinct overriding mark obligation. She just doesn't know it yet. Kieran looked at Thalia, brave, selfless Thalia who nearly died saving his children, and let himself hope for the first time in 2 years. Maybe the impossible wasn't quite as impossible as he'd believed. Chapter 4. Alpha Confrontation. Dax arrived exactly 1 hour later, his presence announced by the sudden tension that rippled through Frost Peak warriors like a stone dropped in still water. Kieran met him in his office as planned, the two alphas facing each other across centuries of complicated history and current crisis. The room was deliberately neutral, no pack symbols, no territorial posturing, just two males who needed to have an impossible conversation. Dax was tall and powerfully built, his dark hair shot through with silver that caught the lamplight. His brown eyes held intelligence and a weariness that Kieran recognized all too well, the exhaustion of carrying burdens you never wanted. Where is she? Dax's voice was controlled, but Kieran could hear the worry beneath the calm exterior. Where's Thalia? Medical wing. Being treated for severe hypothermia. Kieran kept his own voice level, fighting the instinct to bare his teeth at another alpha in his territory. She's stable now, but unconscious. Your warriors gave me permission to bring her here, since Frost Peak was closer. My warriors don't have authority to give my marked mate to another alpha. But Dax's tone lacked real heat. Though I understand why they did. If she was dying.
She was.
Another 10 minutes, and we'd have lost her. Kieran met Dax's eyes directly, refusing to look away first. She saved my pups, Dax. Found them lost in the storm and protected them with her own body. Gave them everything until she had nothing left. Your Luna is the reason my children are alive. Something shifted in Dax's expression. Surprise, perhaps, or a complicated sort of pride. That sounds like Thalia, he said quietly. She can't help but heal, can't help but protect, even when it costs her everything. He paused, studying Kieran with those two knowing eyes. Your pups, they're the ones from the avalanche? The whole territory's been looking for them. They were separated from their training patrol, got lost in the blizzard. Thalia found them purely by chance. By chance. Dax's mouth curved in something that wasn't quite a smile. Or by fate. The direct question hung in the air between them like smoke. She's your true mate, isn't she, Kieran? Dax continued, his voice steady despite the weight of the words. Has been for a while, if I'm reading this correctly. Kieran's breath caught. He hadn't expected Dax to know, hadn't expected this conversation to begin with cards already on the table. You know, he said carefully. Not a question. I suspected. Dax moved to the window, staring out at the snow-covered territory beyond. Thalia's been different for 2 years. Distant. Troubled. At first, I thought she was just unhappy with our arrangement, and she had every right to be. But then I realized it was more than that. She was in pain. Dax's jaw clenched, his hands curling into fists at his sides. Physical pain that she tried to hide, he continued. Emotional pain that she couldn't. The mark at her throat would ache, and she'd press her hand against it like she was trying to stop something from escaping. I asked her once if she'd met someone else. She didn't answer, but her silence told me everything. If you knew, Kieran said slowly, why didn't you? Why didn't I release her? Dax's laugh was bitter. Because she never asked. Because our families expect certain things, alliances maintained, political marriages honored, treaties kept. Because breaking a sacred mark isn't something done lightly, even when you know it's destroying the person wearing it. He turned back to face Kieran, and for the first time, his careful control cracked slightly. And because I'm a coward, Dax admitted. I have my own true mate out there somewhere, Kieran. I have known for 4 years. But I keep Thalia marked because letting her go means admitting I'm trapped in the same impossible situation. That I sacrifice my own happiness for politics, and hers along with it. Kieran stared at the other alpha, seeing past enemies and rivals to someone who understood exactly what he'd been living with. 2 males caught in the same trap, both suffering, both too bound by duty to break free. We're both prisoners, Kieran said quietly, to politics that don't care about mate bonds or happiness or anything except maintaining power. Except now those politics nearly killed her. Dax's voice hardened with something that might have been anger or guilt or both. My healer warned me months ago that Thalia was weakening. That something was draining her, making her vulnerable to illness, compromising her immune system. I didn't realize it was the conflict between my mark and your bond until now. My healer says it's unsustainable, Kieran said. That eventually her body won't be able to handle both. She'll have to choose, break your mark or reject my bond or die slowly, while trapped between them. 3 terrible options. Dax closed his eyes briefly. And none of them are fair to her. Unless you release her. Kieran kept his voice carefully neutral, though his wolf snarled at having to ask permission for what should have been his by right. Willingly break the mark. Make it easier, safer. Let her choose without the threat of death hanging over every decision. And give my political enemy exactly what he wants. Dax opened his eyes, and they were hard now. Hand over my Luna to the Alpha King, who could use her as leverage against Emberclaw? The Council would see it as a weakness. My pack would lose faith in my leadership. We'd be vulnerable. Your pack would see it as mercy, Kieran interrupted. As an alpha putting Luna's well-being above politics. And as for vulnerability, Dax, she nearly died saving my children. Doesn't that tell you everything about where her heart actually is? About who she's really meant to be with? It tells me she's a healer who can't let children suffer regardless of who they are. Dax said sharply. Don't romanticize her sacrifice into some grand declaration of love. She would have done the same for any pups. Emberclaw, Frost Peak, or Rogue. You're right, Kieran admitted. She would have. Because that's who Thalia is, selfless to the point of self-destruction. But that doesn't change the facts. She's my true mate. Your mark is killing her. And you just admitted you have your own mate waiting somewhere, another she-wolf you've been denying for 4 years. He moved closer, his voice dropping. We're all trapped in this together, Dax. All punishing ourselves and each other for the sake of politics that don't actually serve anyone. How many more years do we waste? How much longer does Thalia suffer before her body gives out entirely? How long do you ignore your own mate while holding on to someone who is never truly yours? Dax was quiet for a long moment, his expression unreadable. If I release her, he said finally, if I willingly break the mark, what happens to Emberclaw? My pack has relied on the political advantages that come from my marriage to Thalia's family. The trade agreements, the territorial protections, the alliance itself. Without that connection, we negotiate a new alliance, Kieran said immediately. Directly between Frost Peak and Emberclaw. One built on actual cooperation instead of forced marriages and old grudges. I'm not interested in using Thalia as leverage, Dax. I'm interested in keeping my mate alive and happy. If that means working with your pack instead of against it, I'm willing. You trust me? After everything, the border disputes, the territory wars, the decades of rivalry? No, Kieran said honestly. But I trust her. And if Thalia believes you're worth protecting, worth nearly dying for because she couldn't abandon children even when they were technically enemy pups, then maybe there's more to you than our pack's rivalry suggests. Dax stared at him, something like surprise flickering across his face. That's either naive or brilliant, he said finally. I haven't decided which. He moved toward the door, then paused with his hand on the frame. I want to see her, Dax said. Before I make any decisions, I need to see for myself that she's actually going to survive. She's still unconscious, Kieran warned. I don't care. She's my Luna, my responsibility. Even if she's your mate.
I need to see that she's alive.
That bringing her here wasn't a mistake. Kieran nodded, leading the way to the medical wing. They walked in tense silence. Two alphas who should have been enemies, but were instead bound together by one female who'd somehow become important to both of them in entirely different ways. The medical wing was quiet when they entered, only essential staff remaining. Kala looked up as they approached, her eyes widening slightly at seeing two rival alphas walking side by side. Alpha Dax, she said carefully. Luna Thalia is stable. Her vitals have improved significantly in the last few hours. We're cautiously optimistic. Can I see her? Kala glanced at Kieran, who nodded permission. She led them to a private room where Thalia lay surrounded by monitoring equipment, heated blankets, and the soft glow of healing lamps. She looked fragile in the medical bed, small and pale, her dark hair spread across white pillows, the mark at her throat visible above the blanket's edge. But her breathing was steady now, her color better than it had been hours ago. Dax moved to her bedside, his hand hovering over hers before finally settling there. The gesture was gentle, almost brotherly, affection without passion, care without heat. You terrified me, Dax said softly, though Thalia couldn't hear him. When Marcus called to say you were unconscious, dying, that you'd sacrificed yourself for 3 pups who weren't even ours, I thought I'd lost you. Thought my cowardice had finally killed you. He looked up at Kieran, who stood in the doorway giving them space. She deserves better than what I've given her, Dax continued. 3 years of political marriage, of sharing a home but not a heart, of wearing my mark while her true mate existed somewhere beyond her reach. She deserves to be happy, Kieran. Deserves a mate who's actually hers by choice instead of duty. So do you, Kieran said quietly. Your true mate, the one you won't talk about. She deserves better than being denied, because of politics too. I know. Dax's hand tightened on Thalia's. And maybe once she's settled, once I've done right by her, I'll find the courage to pursue my own happiness. But right now, his smile was sad but genuine. Right now, I'm focused on making sure Thalia gets hers. He stood, turning to face Kieran fully. I'll release her, Dax said, the words clear and final. When she wakes, when she's strong enough, I'll perform the mark-breaking ritual. I'll give her the choice I should have offered 2 years ago, freedom to be with her true mate or stay with me if that's what she truly wants. Relief flooded through Kieran so intensely he had to lock his knees to stay upright. Thank you. Don't thank me, Dax interrupted. I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it for her, because she saved 3 children at nearly the cost of her own life, and that kind of selflessness deserves to be rewarded, not punished. I'm doing it because I've watched her suffer for 2 years and done nothing. I'm doing it because it's 3 years too late, but better late than never. He moved toward the door, pausing beside Kieran. But understand this, Dax said, his voice dropping to alpha command. If you hurt her, if you use her politically, if you make her regret choosing you, rival packs or not, I will come for you. Mark or no mark, she's still under my protection until she decides otherwise. I wouldn't expect anything less, Kieran said. And for what it's worth, I have no intention of hurting her.
She's my mate, Dax.
The other half of my soul. I'd sooner cut off my own arm than cause her pain. Dax studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. I believe you, he said, which is the only reason I'm willing to let her go. He left then, his departure as quiet as his arrival had been explosive. Kieran stood in the doorway watching Thalia sleep, feeling the mate bond pulse stronger now, as if even unconscious, she sensed that freedom was finally within reach. That went better than expected, Calla said, appearing at his elbow. I thought there'd be bloodshed for sure. He loves her, Kieran said quietly. Not the way a mate should, but he does care. Enough to let her go even though it costs him politically. That's more than most alphas would do. Calla moved to check Thalia's monitors, adjusting something that beeped softly. The question now is, when she wakes, will she accept? Will she choose to break the mark and bond with you? Or will duty win again? Kieran moved to Thalia's bedside, his hand finding hers beneath the blanket. The mate bond sang at the contact, warm and right in ways Dax's touch had never been. She'll choose, he said, more to himself than to Calla.
She has to.
Because the alternative is watching her die slowly, and I won't lose another mate. Not when she's right here. Not when we finally have a chance. Thalia's fingers twitched in his grip, and Kieran's heart stuttered. She's waking, Calla said sharply, moving closer. Alpha King, step back and give her space. But Kieran didn't move. Couldn't move. Not when Thalia's eyes were fluttering open, not when she was looking at him with confusion and recognition, and something that might have been hope. Kieran? His name on her lips was barely a whisper, rough from disuse and cold. Did I? You're alive, he said, his voice breaking on the words. You're safe. The pups are safe. Everyone survived because of you. Tears gathered in Thalia's eyes, spilling over to track down her temples. I thought I was dying, she whispered. I thought I'd failed them. You saved them. Kieran brought her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles that sent electricity through the mate bond. You gave them everything. You're a hero, Thalia. My hero. She smiled weakly, then winced as her hand moved to her throat, to the mark that had begun to burn again now that she was conscious, and Kieran was near. It hurts, she said, confusion clouding her features. Why does it hurt more now? And Kieran knew the time for secrets was over. The time for truth had finally arrived. Because we need to talk, he said gently. About the mark. About the bond. About choices you need to make, and the freedom Dax is willing to give you. Thalia's eyes widened, fear and hope warring in their depths. What do you mean? She asked. And Kieran began to explain everything, the competing bonds, the slow death, and the possibility of freedom that had seemed impossible just hours ago. Chapter 5. Awakening Truths. Thalia's world had narrowed to 3 things: the burning pain at her throat, Kieran's ice-blue eyes locked on hers, and the impossible words falling from his lips. The mark is killing you, Kieran said, his voice gentle but unflinching. It has been 2 years. The conflict between Dax's claim and our mate bond. Your body can't sustain both indefinitely. She wanted to argue, to deny, but the truth settled in her chest like a stone. She'd known something was wrong, the chronic pain, the exhaustion that never quite faded, the way simple illnesses lingered weeks longer than they should. She blamed stress, blamed the demanding work of being Luna, blamed everything except what her instincts had been screaming all along. The mark was poison, and the antidote was standing right in front of her. How long? Thalia asked, her voice steadier than she felt. How long have I had?
We don't know exactly.
Calla stepped forward, her healer's demeanor professional, but not unkind. Months, perhaps a year or two. But Luna, you're already weakening. The hypothermia should have been survivable with basic treatment. Instead, you nearly died because your body didn't have the reserves to fight back. The competing bonds are draining you. Thalia closed her eyes, processing. 2 years of living half a life, of pretending the bond didn't exist, of burying her wants beneath duty, and it had been killing her the entire time. There are options, Kieran said, and something in his tone made her open her eyes again. 3 of them, according to Calla. You can break Dax's mark. Dangerous, but possible. You can reject our mate bond. Emotionally devastating and rarely successful. Or you can continue as you have been until your body gives out completely. Those are terrible options, Thalia whispered. I know. Kieran's hand tightened on hers. But there's something you need to understand, Thalia. Dax was here. We talked. Kieran's voice caught slightly. He's willing to release you. To willingly break the mark and give you the choice to accept our bond, if that's what you want. Thalia's breath stopped. Dax agreed to release me? The words felt foreign, impossible. But the alliance, the political advantages, his pack. He said you deserve to be happy, Kieran interrupted. That you deserve a mate who's actually yours by choice instead of duty. And he's right, Thalia. You do deserve that. You deserve everything. Tears burned in her eyes again, but these were different. Not grief or fear, but something dangerously close to hope. I don't understand, she managed. 3 years of marriage, of maintaining the alliance, of following pack law, and he's just willing to let me go. He loves you, Kieran said quietly. Not as a mate, but he does care. Enough to recognize that keeping you marked while you're bonded to someone else is slowly destroying you. Enough to choose your happiness over political convenience. He has his own true mate, Thalia said suddenly, the pieces clicking together. Doesn't he? Someone he's been denying just like I've been denying you. Kieran nodded. He admitted it. Said once you're settled, he might finally pursue his own happiness. But right now, he's focused on giving you yours. Thalia's hand moved to her throat, pressing against the mark that had defined her for 3 years. The claiming scar pulsed with heat, painful now in ways it had never been when she was safely distant from Kieran. If we break it, she said slowly, if I agree to this, what happens? What does the ritual involve? Calla moved closer, her expression grave. Mark breaking is ancient magic, Luna. Dangerous even under the best circumstances. The mark exists in 3 forms, physical, magical, and emotional. We have to serve all 3 simultaneously, and your body will fight it because the mark is designed to be permanent. But with Dax's consent, it's safer, Kieran added quickly. His willingness to release you makes the magical component less traumatic. It's still risky, but survivable with proper precautions. Define risky, Thalia said. Seizures, shock, cardiac arrest, all possible. Calla's honesty was brutal, but necessary. I'll have medications ready to manage symptoms, but ultimately your body has to decide to release the mark. If it fights too hard, if the magical bond doesn't want to let go, you could die on that table. So my options are to die slowly over months, or possibly die quickly during the ritual. Thalia's laugh was hollow. Not much of a choice. Or you could stay marked, Kieran said, though the words clearly cost him. Accept the slow deterioration, and I'll walk away. Suppress the bond completely. Never contact you again. Remove the conflict as much as possible. That wouldn't work, Calla interjected. The bond exists whether you acknowledge it or not, Alpha King. Distance might help marginally, but the fundamental conflict would remain. Luna Thalia's body knows she's meant for you, and it will continue rejecting Alpha Dax's mark regardless of whether you're in contact. Thalia looked at Kieran, really looked at him for the first time since waking. He was everything she remembered from that single meeting 2 years ago. Powerful, commanding, devastatingly handsome. But he was different too. Older, more tired, carrying grief and responsibility that had carved lines around his eyes. He'd lost a mate 4 years ago, raised 3 pups alone, built a kingdom while burying his own pain deep enough that no one saw it crack. And now he was offering her freedom, true freedom, even though it terrified him. She could see the fear in his eyes, the way his hand trembled slightly against hers. He was afraid she'd say no. Afraid she'd choose duty over destiny again. Afraid he'd lose another mate before truly having her. "Tell me about the mark breaking," Thalia said, her decision already forming. "Everything. I want to know exactly what I'm agreeing to." Relief and terror warred across Kieran's face, but he nodded. Calla pulled up a chair, settling in for what was clearly going to be a detailed explanation. "The ritual requires 3 participants," she began. "Myself as a healer to manage the magical and medical aspects. Alpha Dax to actively release his claim. And you, Luna, to accept that release and reject the mark consciously." "What about Kieran?" Thalia asked. "I'll be there," Kieran said immediately. "Close enough to see everything but not interfering with the process. The mate bond will actually help. It'll give your body something to anchor to as Dax's mark is removed. Nature abhors a vacuum. As one bond breaks, the other can rush in to fill that space. The physical component comes first," Calla continued. "I'll use healer magic to dissolve the scar tissue at your throat. It will be painful, like someone carving into your flesh with heated blades. We'll give you something to bite down on, but we can't use numbing agents because you need to stay conscious throughout." Thalia swallowed hard but nodded. "Go on." "Next is the magical component, the actual bond between you and Alpha Dax. This is where his consent matters most. He'll need to actively reject the mark he placed, willingly sever the connection. That's the most dangerous stage because the magic won't want to let go. It'll pull at something fundamental inside you, like part of your identity is being ripped away." "Because it is," Thalia said quietly. "The mark has defined me for 3 years. Luna of Emberclaw, Dax's mate, bound by duty and politics and family expectations. Removing it means becoming someone else entirely." "It means becoming yourself," Kieran said fiercely. "The person you were always meant to be before politics decided your future." "The final stage is emotional," Calla said. "This is the part we can't fully predict. The mark represents 3 years of shared history, memories, experiences, the life you've built with Alpha Dax. Breaking it doesn't erase those memories, but it does change their nature. They'll feel distant, like they belong to someone else. Some wolves find that liberating. Others find it devastating. Like losing 3 years of your life," Thalia murmured. "Like reclaiming them," Kieran countered. "Those years happened, Thalia. They shaped you, taught you, made you who you are. But they don't have to define who you become next." Thalia was quiet for a long moment, her mind racing through implications and possibilities and fears. "When?" she asked finally. "When would we do this?" "Tonight," Calla said. "Your body is weak from hypothermia, but waiting makes it worse. Every hour you spend in close proximity to Alpha Kieran while bearing Alpha Dax's mark increases the conflict and drains you further. If we're doing this, we should do it soon." "Tonight," Thalia repeated, the word feeling too large, too immediate. That's not enough time to what?" Kieran asked gently. "To change your mind? To talk yourself out of it? To let fear convince you that staying marked is safer than taking the risk?" He moved closer, his free hand coming up to cup her face with infinite gentleness. "I know you're scared," he said. "I'm terrified too. The thought of you on that table, in pain, possibly dying, it makes me want to lock you away somewhere safe and never let you risk yourself again. But Thalia, staying as you are isn't safe. It's a guarantee of slow death. At least with the ritual, there's a chance for something better on the other side." "A chance for us," Thalia whispered. "Yes, a chance for us. For the bond we were meant to have. For the life we could build together if we're brave enough to fight for it." Thalia looked into his ice-blue eyes and saw everything she'd been denying for 2 years. Want, need, belonging, home. The mate bond sang between them, insistent and undeniable, promising completion if she was willing to reach for it. I need to talk to Dax first, she said. Before the ritual. I need to hear from him that this is truly what he wants, that I'm not destroying him politically or personally by accepting your offer. He's still here, Kieran said. In the guest quarters. I can have him brought.
No.
I'll go to him. Thalia started to sit up, then gasped as pain lanced through her body. Everything hurt, muscles, bones, the skin that had been exposed to killing cold. You're not going anywhere, Calla said firmly, pressing her back down. You're still recovering from severe hypothermia, Luna. I'll send for Alpha Dax to come here. Alone, Thalia added, looking at Kieran apologetically. I need to speak with him privately. There are things, conversations we should have had years ago that we avoided because it was easier than facing the truth. Something flickered across Kieran's face. Jealousy, perhaps, or insecurity, but he nodded. I'll wait outside, he said. But Thalia, he squeezed her hand. Whatever he says, whatever you decide, know that I'll respect your choice. Even if it kills me to do it. I know, she whispered. He left reluctantly, his presence seeming to take all the warmth from the room with it. Thalia leaned back against the pillows, exhaustion pulling at her despite the monumental decisions looming. Calla busied herself checking monitors and adjusting equipment, giving Thalia space to think. But there was too much to process, too many threads tangling together. 3 small pups alive because she'd refused to let them die. A mate bond that had been screaming at her for 2 years finally acknowledged. A husband who was offering her freedom despite the political cost. And a ritual that might kill her or might finally give her the happiness she'd stopped believing was possible. The door opened again, and Dax entered, tall, familiar, wearing exhaustion like a second skin. Thalia, he said, relief flooding his face. You're awake. When they said you were conscious, he stopped, looking uncertain in ways he never had before. Sit, Thalia said gently, gesturing to the chair beside her bed. Please, Dax. We need to talk. He sat, and for the first time in 3 years of political marriage, they looked at each other without pretense or performance. Just 2 wolves trapped in an impossible situation, finally ready to face the truth. Kieran told me, Thalia said, about your offer, about being willing to release me. I should have done it 2 years ago, Dax said quietly. The moment I realized you'd found your true mate. Should have been selfless enough to let you go before the situation became life-threatening. But I was a coward, Thalia. Afraid of disappointing my pack, my family, afraid of facing my own truth if I gave you permission to pursue yours. You're not a coward, Thalia said. You're someone trapped by the same expectations that trapped me. Someone who sacrificed his own happiness for duty, just like I did. But now that duty is killing you. Dax's hand found hers, his grip familiar, but not electric like Kieran's touch. And I can't continue to stand by and watch it happen. You deserve better, Thalia. You always have. So do you. Thalia squeezed his hand. Your true mate, the one you've been denying, you should be with her, Dax. You should be as happy as you're trying to let me be. Maybe someday, he said. But right now, this is about you. About giving you the choice I stole 3 years ago when I agreed to this arrangement. About correcting a mistake that should never have been made. Our marriage wasn't a mistake, Thalia said firmly. It was a sacrifice we both made for our packs. There's honor in that, even if it wasn't sustainable. You've been a good husband, Dax. A good alpha. A good friend. This situation isn't your fault. It's not yours either. Dax's voice was rough. You saved Kieran's pup, Thalia. Saved them when you could have left them to die, when pack politics said you should have protected yourself first. That kind of selflessness, it deserves to be rewarded, not punished with a slow death because I'm too political to let you go. He stood, moving to the window, his shoulders tight with tension. I'm releasing you, he said, his voice carrying the alpha command. Not because Kieran demanded it, Not because the situation became desperate, but because it's the right thing to do. Because you've suffered enough for an alliance that should never have required your happiness as payment. Tears slipped down Thalia's cheeks. Thank you, she whispered. For understanding. For being brave enough to let go when it costs you so much. It costs me nothing compared to what keeping you would cost you, Dax said. He turned back to her, and his eyes were bright with unshed tears. You'll always be important to me, Thalia. Always be someone I care about, someone I want protected and happy. But you were never truly mine. And I think I always knew that. I hope you find her, Thalia said. Your true mate. I hope she makes you as happy as Kieran makes me feel just by existing. Me too. Dax moved back to her bedside, pressing a kiss to her forehead. Gentle, brotherly, final. Be happy, Thalia. That's all I ask. Be deliriously, impossibly happy. Make this sacrifice worth it. I will, she promised. He left then, his departure feeling like the closing of a chapter that had been painful but necessary. And when Kieran slipped back into the room moments later, when his presence filled all the empty spaces Dax's absence had created, Thalia knew with absolute certainty what her choice would be. I want to do it, she said before Kieran could ask. Tonight. The mark-breaking ritual. I want to be free, Kieran. I want to be yours. The smile that broke across his face was like sunrise after the longest night. Then let's make you free, he said. And Thalia, for the first time in 3 years, felt like she could finally breathe. Chapter 6. The Breaking Begins. The ritual chamber was nothing like Thalia had imagined. She'd expected something dark and foreboding, stone walls carved with ancient runes, shadows pooling in corners, the weight of centuries pressing down. Instead, the room was warm and purposeful, reinforced walls lined with protective wards that glowed faintly blue, medical equipment standing ready alongside mystical implements. It was a place designed for transformation, not torture. Though Thalia suspected the distinction would blur once the ritual began. The chamber has been used for mark-breaking twice before, Kala explained as she helped Thalia onto the raised platform in the center. Both were successful, though neither was easy. The wards will contain any magical backlash, and the medical equipment ensures we can respond immediately if your body goes into shock. Reassuring, Thalia murmured, though her hands trembled as she lay back against the cushioned surface. She wore a simple shift that left her throat exposed, the mark clearly visible against her skin. In the chamber's soft light, Dax's claiming scar looked almost alive, pulsing faintly with the magic that bound them. Magic that would be violently severed within the hour. Kieran stood at the foot of the platform, close enough to see everything but not interfering with Kala's workspace. His ice-blue eyes never left Thalia's face, and she could feel his terror through the mate bond, waves of fear crashing against his iron control. He was afraid she wouldn't survive. Afraid this desperate gamble would kill her. I'm afraid too, Thalia thought, wishing she could send the words through the bond. But more afraid of the alternative. Dax entered last, his presence filling the chamber with quiet authority. He'd changed into ritual clothing, simple, unadorned, symbolic of stripping away pretense. His expression was calm, but Thalia knew him well enough to see the tension in his shoulders, the tightness around his eyes. This hurt him too. Letting go always did. Luna Thalia, Kala said formally, her healer's demeanor shifting into something older, more ceremonial. Do you enter this ritual of your own free will, understanding the risks and accepting the consequences of success or failure? I do, Thalia said, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her. Alpha Dax, Kala continued, turning to him. Do you willingly release your claim on Luna Thalia, acknowledging that the mark you placed was political rather than destined, and accepting that severing this bond serves her highest good? I do, Dax said quietly. I release her with full knowledge and consent. The mark was mine to give, and it is mine to take away. Alpha King Kieran, Kala said. Do you stand as anchor for Luna Thalia, offering your mate bond as sanctuary when the severing is complete, and swearing to honor and protect her should she survive this ritual? With everything I am, Kieran said, his voice rough with emotion. I swear it.
Calla nodded, satisfied.
She moved to a table laden with implements, herbs that smoked in silver bowls, crystals that caught the light and split it into rainbow fragments, vials of liquid that glowed with their own internal luminescence. We begin with physical, she announced. Luna, this will hurt. I need you to stay as still as possible, but I understand if you cannot. Scream if you must. Fight if you cannot help it. But try to remain conscious throughout. Losing consciousness during the severing can cause the magic to fracture unpredictably. I understand, Thalia whispered. Calla handed her a leather strap. Bite down on this. It will help. Thalia placed the leather between her teeth, tasting oil and age and the faint copper tang of old blood. How many others had bitten this same strap? How many had survived what came next? Calla's hands settled over the mark at Thalia's throat, glowing with soft green healer magic. The light was beautiful, gentle, completely at odds with the agony that followed. Fire. That's what it felt like. Someone pressing heated brands into her throat, carving through skin and muscle and magic with surgical precision. Thalia's back arched off the platform, her teeth clenching so hard on the leather strap she tasted fresh blood mixing with old. She wanted to scream. I wanted to thrash and fight, and make it stop. But some deep part of her, the healer who understood the necessity of pain, the Luna who'd endured 3 years of slow suffering, held still and endured. Physical anchor dissolving, Calla announced, her voice distant through the roaring in Thalia's ears. Scar tissue breaking down. Cellular memory releasing. Moving to the magical component. The pain shifted, deepened. This wasn't physical anymore. This was something fundamental being torn away. The invisible thread that had connected her to Dax for 3 years began to fray, each strand snapping with audible cracks that echoed in the magical realm, if not the physical one. Thalia screamed then, the leather strap falling from her mouth as her body convulsed. This was worse than freezing to death. Worse than any injury she'd ever treated. This was having part of her soul ripped out by the roots. Dax now. Calla's command cut through the chaos. You need to actively reject the bond. Push it away. Make your intention clear. Dax moved closer, his hand hovering over Thalia's chest where the magical bond pulsed weakly. I release you, Thalia, he said, his voice carrying an alpha command that resonated through multiple planes of existence. I reject this mark as false, acknowledge this bond as broken, and free you from all claims I placed upon you. By my will and my word, you are no longer mine. The magical thread between them snapped. Thalia's scream tore from her throat raw and primal. Her body seized, muscles locking, heart stuttering in her chest as the bond that had defined her for 3 years simply ceased to exist. The monitors screeched warnings. Calla's hands moved frantically, magic pouring into Thalia's body, trying to stabilize systems that were crashing. She's seizing. Calla shouted. Kieran, I need you closer. Let her feel the mate bond. Give her something to anchor to before she slips away completely. Kieran was there instantly, his hand finding Thalia's, his presence flooding through the mate bond with desperate intensity. I'm here, his emotions screamed at her. You're not alone. Hold on to me.
Hold on.
Thalia's consciousness was fragmenting, reality blurring at the edges. She could feel herself slipping away, the pain too great, the void where Dax's mark had been too vast and terrifying. But then warmth. Connection. The mate bond surging forward like a tide, rushing in to fill the emptiness Dax's mark had left behind. Not replacing it exactly, but transforming the void into something new, something right. Her body recognized Kieran's presence on a cellular level, recognized him as home, as safety, as the bond she was meant to carry. The seizure eased. Her heart rate stabilized. The screaming in her mind quieted to manageable pain. She's stabilizing, Calla said, relief flooding her voice. The mate bond is anchoring her. Kieran, don't let go. Keep that connection strong while I finish the emotional component. Not letting go, Kieran said roughly. Never letting go. The emotional severing was gentler, but somehow more devastating. Thalia felt 3 years of memory shift and change, not disappearing, but becoming distant. Meals shared with Dax, conversations in quiet moments, the comfortable partnership they'd built, all of it fading like old photographs left too long in sunlight. She was losing pieces of herself. Or perhaps discovering pieces that had always been there, just buried beneath duty and obligation. Almost done, Calla murmured, her magic weaving intricate patterns through Thalia's energy field. Just a little longer, Luna. You're doing beautifully. Thalia's awareness narrowed to 3 points. Calla's magic working through her system, Kieran's presence anchoring her through the bond, and the slow, inexorable process of becoming unmarked. Of becoming free. The final thread severed with a sound like breaking glass, beautiful and terrible and utterly final. Silence fell over the ritual chamber. Thalia's eyes fluttered open, and the first thing she saw was Kieran's face, terrified, relieved, devastated by what he'd just witnessed. Is it? Her voice was wrecked, barely functional. Is it done? Calla's hands moved to Thalia's throat, checking. When she pulled away, her smile was genuine. It's done, she confirmed. The mark is broken. You're free, Luna Thalia. Thalia's hand moved to her throat where Dax's scar had been. The skin was smooth now, unmarked, as if the claim had never happened. Only the faintest warmth remained. Evidence of magic recently worked, wounds recently healed. She looked at Dax, who stood pale and shaking at the edge of the platform. Breaking the mark had cost him too. She could see it in his eyes, in the way he held himself like something had been carved out of his chest. Thank you, she whispered, for letting me go. Be happy, Dax said, his voice thick with emotion. That's all I ask. Be so happy it makes this worth it. He left quickly, his departure feeling like the final severing, not of magic this time, but of the complicated affection they'd shared. He would always be important to her, always be someone she cared about. But he was no longer hers, and she was no longer his. She was simply Thalia, unmarked, unchained,
Free.
And when Kieran's hand tightened on hers, when the mate bond blazed between them without the mark's interference, Thalia felt something she hadn't experienced in 3 years. Pure, uncomplicated joy. Hi, she said, smiling up at Kieran through tears. I'm Thalia, your mate. Hi, Kieran said back, his own eyes bright with unshed tears. I'm Kieran, the male who's been waiting 2 years to hear you say that. Sorry I'm late, Thalia whispered. You're here now, Kieran said, bringing her hand to his lips. That's all that matters. Calla cleared her throat delicately. This is very touching, and I'm thrilled the ritual succeeded. But Luna Thalia still needs rest. The mark breaking was successful, but it was also traumatic. She needs at least 12 hours of recovery before we even discuss the claiming ceremony. Claiming ceremony? Thalia's heart stuttered. You didn't think we'd leave you unmarked, did you? Kieran's smile was soft, intimate. You've just broken one bond, Thalia. Now you need to accept another, this time, the right one. The one that was always meant to be yours. When? The word came out breathless, eager. When you're ready, Kieran said. When your body has recovered and your mind has processed. When you're absolutely certain this is what you want, not what duty demands or politics require, but what you choose for yourself. Thalia looked at him, really looked at him, and saw her future written in ice-blue eyes. Saw 3 small pups who needed a mother, a kingdom that needed a Luna who chose her position rather than inherited it, and a mate who would love her with the intensity she'd always deserved but never received. I'm ready now, she said. You're exhausted and in pain, Kieran countered gently. I'm not claiming you while you're barely conscious and recovering from magical trauma. When I mark you, Thalia, I want you strong and certain and fully aware of what we're creating together. 3 days, Calla interjected. Give her 3 days to recover fully. Then, if she still wants the claim, we'll arrange the ceremony. 3 days. 72 hours between freedom and forever. 3 days. Thalia agreed, though every instinct screamed at her to demand it happen immediately, to secure the bond while she still had the courage. But Kieran was right. This was too important to rush. Too precious to taint with exhaustion and trauma. She would wait. And then she would choose, freely, joyfully, to belong to the mate destiny had always intended for her. Rest now, Kieran said, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. I'll be here when you wake. And every day after, if you'll have me, I'll have you, Thalia whispered as exhaustion finally claimed her. I was always going to choose you, Kieran. Even when I thought I couldn't, some part of me already had. She slipped into sleep with those words hanging in the air and the mate bond humming contentedly between them, finally free of interference, finally allowed to exist as it was always meant to. Finally free. Chapter 7. Healing and Homecoming. Thalia woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows and 3 pairs of eyes staring at her with unnerving intensity. She's awake, the smallest voice announced with barely contained excitement. Jasper, quiet, the eldest boy hissed. Papa said not to wake her. But she's already awake, so it doesn't count, the girl argued with impeccable child logic. Thalia blinked, her mind still fuzzy with sleep and residual pain from the ritual. 3 small faces swam into focus. Kieran's children, the pups she'd nearly died saving, now perched at the foot of her bed like curious ravens. Hello, she managed, her voice still rough. You're not dead. Jasper's relief was palpable. We thought, when you stopped moving in the cave, we thought you were dead like Mama. Thalia's heart clenched. No, little one. Not dead. Just very, very cold. But I'm better now. Because Papa brought you here, Phoebe said solemnly, her ice-blue eyes, so like Kieran's, studying Thalia with disconcerting intensity. Because you're his mate, and mates take care of each other. Papa said we couldn't visit until you were stronger, Stellan added, though his tone suggested they'd visited anyway. But it's been 3 days, and Healer Kala said you were recovering well, and we really wanted to thank you for saving us. 3 days. She'd slept for 3 days? As if summoned by the thought, Kala appeared in the doorway, her expression caught between amusement and exasperation. I specifically told you 3 to wait until I checked on Luna Thalia first, the healer said, though her tone lacked real reproach. We were quiet, Jasper protested. You were breathing loudly enough to wake the dead, Kala countered. Out, all of you. Luna needs to be examined, and then if I clear her, you can visit properly. The pups scrambled off the bed with varying degrees of reluctance, but not before each one touched Thalia briefly, small hands on her arm, her shoulder, her hand. Seeking connection, reassurance that she was real and alive and not disappearing. We made you something, Phoebe said shyly, producing a carefully folded piece of paper from her pocket. For when you feel better. Then they were gone, herded out by Kala's firm but gentle guidance. Thalia unfolded the paper with trembling fingers. It was a drawing, crude but heartfelt, showing 4 stick figures. 3 small ones labeled Stellan, Phoebe, and Jasper. And 1 larger figure with dark hair and a dress labeled Thalia, who saved us. Above them, someone had drawn a moon and stars and in careful, painstaking letters, "Thank you for not letting us die." Tears burned in Thalia's eyes. They've been waiting for you to wake up, Kala said softly, moving to check Thalia's vitals with practiced efficiency. All 3 camped outside your door yesterday until Alpha Kieran physically carried them to bed. They're quite attached to you. I barely know them, Thalia whispered. You died for them. In their eyes, that makes you family. Kala's hands moved to Thalia's throat, checking where the mark had been. Her touch was clinical, but her smile was genuine. The mark breaking took beautifully, she announced. No scarring, no residual magical contamination, no sign of rejection or complication. You're healing faster than expected, probably because the mate bond is finally allowed to flow unimpeded. As if responding to her words, the bond pulsed warmly in Thalia's chest. She could feel Kieran through it now, not his exact location, but his emotional state. He was worried, hopeful, and trying very hard not to burst into her room to check on her himself. He's been here constantly, Calla said, following Thalia's gaze to the door. Watching you sleep, holding your hand, talking to you even though you couldn't hear. Valen had to drag him away this morning for alpha duties, but I expect he'll be back within the hour. How long until the claiming ceremony? Thalia asked, her heart racing at the thought. Physically, you could handle it today. The mark breaking was successful, and your body has accepted the change remarkably well. Calla settled into the chair beside the bed, her expression turning serious. But Thalia, I need to ask, are you certain this is what you want? Not because it's expected, not because the alternative is dying, but because you genuinely choose Kieran and this life. I'm certain, Thalia said without hesitation. I've been certain since the moment I met him 2 years ago. I just finally have the freedom to act on it. Calla nodded, satisfied. Then we can hold the ceremony whenever you're ready. Tonight, tomorrow, next week, Kieran has made it clear he'll wait as long as you need. Tonight, Thalia said immediately. I've waited 2 years already. I don't want to wait anymore. A smile curved Calla's lips. Then tonight it is. I'll inform Alpha Kieran and begin preparations. She stood to leave, then paused at the door. For what it's worth, Luna, you made the right choice. I've known Kieran for 15 years, through his first mating and the devastation of losing her. I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you. Like you're the answer to questions he'd stopped asking. Like you're home. After Calla left, Thalia lay quietly, processing the magnitude of what was about to happen. Tonight, she would accept Kieran's claiming mark. Tonight, she will become Luna of Frost Peak. Tonight, she would officially become a mate to an Alpha King and mother to 3 pups who'd already claimed her heart. The weight of it should have been terrifying. Instead, it felt like finally being allowed to breathe after years of holding her breath. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. The door opened to reveal Kieran, his ice blue eyes scanning her face with such intensity she felt stripped bare. You're awake, he said, his voice rough with emotion. Calla said, but I needed to see for myself. I'm awake, Thalia confirmed, her heart stuttering at the sight of him. And your children ambushed me the moment I opened my eyes. Kieran groaned, moving into the room with predatory grace. I told them to wait. I should have known better. When those 3 decide something, pack law becomes optional. He settled into the chair Calla had vacated, close enough to touch but maintaining careful distance, as if afraid he might break her with too much proximity. How do you feel? He asked. Like I was turned inside out and put back together, Thalia admitted. But also lighter. Like I've been carrying something heavy for so long I forgot what it felt like to stand up straight, and now it's gone. The mark, Kieran said quietly. Dax's claim. It was always a weight you shouldn't have carried. And now I'm free to carry yours instead. Thalia reached for his hand, lacing their fingers together. The mate bond sang at the contact, warm and right in ways that made her chest ache. Calla says we can hold the claiming ceremony tonight. If that's what you want. What do I want? Kieran's laugh was incredulous. Thalia, I've wanted this since the moment I met you 2 years ago. Since I looked across that council chamber and knew with absolute certainty that you were meant to be mine. Every day since has been an exercise in restraint. He brought their joined hands to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles that sent electricity through the bond. But I need you to understand what you're agreeing to, he continued. Being my mate means more than just accepting a mark. It means becoming Luna to Frost Peak, mother to 3 grieving pups who desperately need stability, and partner to an alpha who has no idea how to balance kingdom and family. It means dealing with political complications from your former pack, navigating pack members who'll see you as an outsider, and building a life from scratch in territory that isn't yours. Territory that will become mine, Thalia corrected. The moment you claim me, Frost Peak becomes my home. Your pups become my pups. Your kingdom becomes my responsibility too. She squeezed his hand, holding his gaze steadily. I'm not afraid of hard work, Kieran. I've been Luna before, I know what the position demands. And yes, there will be complications and challenges, and probably wolves who resent me for political reasons. But none of that matters compared to finally being with my true mate, finally building the life we were always meant to have. You make it sound simple, Kieran murmured. It is simple. I love you. You love me. Everything else is just details we'll figure out together. Kieran's breath caught. You love me. Of course I love you. Thalia's voice was soft but certain. I've loved you since that first meeting. Since you looked at me with those ice blue eyes, and I felt the bond snap into place like coming home. I've loved you through 2 years of denial and pain and impossible distance. Tonight just makes it official. Kieran surged forward, capturing her lips in a kiss that was gentle despite the desperation behind it. The mate bond exploded between them, flooding Thalia with emotions so intense she gasped against his mouth. Want, need, love, relief, joy, home. I love you too, Kieran said when they finally broke apart, his forehead resting against hers. I loved you when I thought I couldn't have you. I loved you when you were marked by another alpha and I had to watch from a distance. I loved you when you nearly died saving my children. And I'll love you every day after this one, for the rest of our lives. Then claim me, Thalia whispered. Tonight. Make it official. Make me yours in every way that matters. Tonight, Kieran agreed. But first, he pulled back slightly, his expression turning mischievous. There are 3 small pups who are probably listening at the door and desperate to spend time with the female who saved them. Think you're strong enough to meet them properly? Thalia laughed, the sound bright and free. Send them in. Let's start this family the right way. Kieran moved to the door and opened it. Sure enough, 3 small bodies tumbled inside, having clearly been pressed against the wood eavesdropping. We weren't listening, Jasper announced immediately. Definitely weren't, Phoebe agreed, her expression far too innocent. Papa, they were totally listening, Stellan said with the weary tone of an eldest sibling perpetually betrayed by his younger ones. Kieran sighed. Everyone on the bed.
Carefully.
Luna Thalia is still recovering. The pups climbed up with surprising gentleness, arranging themselves around Thalia like petals around a flower. Jasper claimed her left side, Phoebe her right, and Stellan settled at the foot, his expression serious, but his eyes bright with barely contained happiness. So, Stellan said, you're going to be our new mama. It wasn't a question, but Thalia answered anyway. If you'll have me. I know I can never replace your mother, would never try to. But I'd very much like to be someone you can count on, someone who loves you and protects you, and is there when you need her. Mama said the moon would send us someone, Phoebe said softly, before she died. She said not to be sad, because the moon watches over all wolves, and she'd make sure we had someone to love us, when she couldn't anymore. Thalia's throat tightened with emotion. Your mama sounds like she was very wise. She was the best, Jasper said loyally. But you're pretty good too. You kept us warm when we were dying and you sang us that song and you didn't leave even when you were freezing. I couldn't leave you, Thalia said simply. The moment I found you, you became mine to protect. That's what, she paused, searching for words. That's what mothers do. We protect our pups, no matter the cost. Even pups that aren't technically yours yet. Stellan asked, his ice blue eyes far too knowing. Even then, Thalia confirmed. The bond doesn't wait for ceremonies and official claims. It exists the moment you decide someone is worth dying for. Kieran made a sound suspiciously like a choked sob from his position by the window. When Thalia looked at him, his eyes were bright with unshed tears. What? She asked. Nothing, Kieran managed. Just watching you with them. Seeing them accept you so easily. It's everything I didn't let myself hope for. Well, hope away, Thalia said, opening her arms as all 3 pups snuggled closer. Because this is happening. Tonight, I become your mate officially. And these 3, she pressed kisses to each small head. These 3 become mine in every way that matters. Can we call you Mama? Jasper asked shyly. Or, is that too soon? Thalia's heart cracked wide open. You can call me whatever feels right, little one. Thalia, Luna, Mama. I answer to all of them as long as you say it with love. Mama Thalia. Phoebe tested the words. I like it. It sounds warm. Then Mama Thalia it is. Thalia agreed, blinking back tears. They stayed like that for hours. Thalia propped against pillows, 3 pups curled around her, Kieran watching with an expression of such tender joy it made her ache. They talked about everything and nothing. The pups told her about their mother, their pack, their favorite games and foods and stories. Thalia told them about her healing work, about growing up in Emberclaw, about the herbs she'd been gathering when the storm hit. And slowly, carefully, they began weaving themselves together into something new. Not a replacement family. Not a substitute for what was lost. But something precious and chosen, and entirely their own. When Calla finally shooed the pups out to prepare for the evening ceremony, Stellan paused at the door. Mama said families are made by choice, not just blood, he said quietly. I think she'd be happy we chose you. I think so too, Thalia whispered. And as the door closed behind them, as Kieran moved to sit beside her and pull her into his arms, Thalia felt the final pieces of her new life clicking into place.
Tonight, she would be claimed.
Tonight, she will become Luna of Frost Peak. Tonight, she would finally be home. Chapter 8. The Claiming. The claiming ceremony would be intimate, just essential pack members, the 3 pups, and the 2 souls finally allowed to complete their bond. Thalia stood in the ceremonial chamber, wearing a dress of deep midnight blue that flowed like water when she moved. It had been Kieran's first mate's, offered by Calla, with the gentle explanation that the former Luna would have wanted it used for joy rather than gathering dust in memory. She would have liked you, Calla had said while helping Thalia dress. Marina was a healer too. She believed in following your heart even when it was difficult. She'd approve of this bond, of you giving Kieran and the pups a second chance at happiness. Now, staring at her reflection, Thalia barely recognized herself. The mark at her throat was gone, smooth, unmarked skin where Dax's claim had been. Her eyes were bright despite the lingering exhaustion, her cheeks flushed with anticipation rather than cold. She looked free. She looked happy. She looked like someone about to claim her destiny. Ready?
Calla asked from the doorway.
I've been ready for 2 years, Thalia said. The ceremonial chamber had been transformed. Candles flickered in silver holders, casting dancing shadows across walls draped with frost blue silk. The raised platform where she'd endured the mark-breaking now held only cushions and moonflowers, symbols of new beginnings and faded bonds. Frost Peak's essential wolves gathered in a semicircle, warriors, advisors, healers. Their faces showed curiosity, cautious welcome, and in some cases open skepticism. Thalia was an outsider, former Luna of a rival pack, someone who'd caused political complications by merely existing. She would have to earn their trust, prove herself worthy of their Alpha King. But first she had to complete the bond. Kieran stood at the center of the platform, and Thalia's breath caught at the sight of him. He wore traditional ceremonial clothing, dark leather and fur that emphasized his powerful build, silver clasps that marked him as Alpha King. His ice-blue eyes found hers across the chamber, and the mate bond flared so intensely she felt it in her bones. Mine, the bond whispered. Finally, completely mine. Stellan, Phoebe, and Jasper sat in the front row, wearing their finest clothes and expressions of barely contained excitement. When Thalia caught Jasper's eye, he gave her an enthusiastic thumbs up that made several pack members smile despite themselves. Valen stepped forward, Kieran's beta, serving as ceremony officiant. His weathered face was kind, and when he looked at Thalia, she saw only welcome. We gather under the moon's witness, Valen began, his voice carrying through the chamber, to complete a bond written by fate itself. Luna Thalia of Emberclaw has been released from her previous mark through proper ritual and alpha consent. She comes to this claim freely, with full knowledge of what it means to accept Alpha King Kieran's claim. He turned to Thalia. Luna Thalia, do you enter this bond of your own will? Do you accept Kieran as your true mate, your alpha, and your partner in all things? I do, Thalia said clearly. I accept him freely, joyfully, and completely. Do you understand that accepting his claim makes you Luna of Frost Peak? That you will carry the responsibilities of leading this pack, protecting its members, and upholding its laws. I understand and accept. Do you swear to honor the bond between you, through prosperity and hardship, through peace and conflict, through all the days the moon grants you? I swear it. Valen nodded, satisfied, then turned to Kieran. Alpha King Kieran, do you claim Luna Thalia as your true mate? Do you accept her as your equal partner, your Luna, and the one who will stand beside you in leading Frost Peak? I do. Kieran's voice was rough with emotion. I claim her as mine in every way that matters. My mate, my Luna, my heart. Do you swear to protect her, honor her choices, and cherish the bond between you for all your days? I swear it, with everything I am. Then by the authority granted to me as Beta of Frost Peak, and under the moon's eternal witness, Valen's voice rose, filling the chamber with power. I declare this bond recognized and sanctified. Alpha Kieran, claim your mate. Kieran moved toward Thalia with predatory grace, closing the distance between them in 3 long strides. His hands came up to cup her face with infinite gentleness, his ice-blue eyes searching hers one final time. Last chance to change your mind, he whispered, so quietly only she could hear. Once I mark you, you're mine forever. I was always yours, Thalia whispered back. The mark just makes it official. Kieran's smile was devastating, joy and relief and love so intense it made her chest ache. Then he lowered his head, his lips finding hers in a kiss that sent electricity through the mate bond. But this was just the beginning. Kieran's mouth moved from her lips to her jaw, trailing kisses along her throat until he found the place where Dax's mark had been. The skin there was sensitive, still healing from magical trauma, and when Kieran's teeth grazed it gently, Thalia gasped. This will hurt, he murmured against her skin. But only for a moment. Then you'll be mine, and I'll be yours, and nothing will ever separate us again. Do it, Thalia breathed. Claim me. Kieran's teeth sank into her throat. The pain was sharp and immediate, not the prolonged agony of the mark breaking, but the fierce bite of transformation. Thalia felt his magic pouring into her, alpha power and mate bond intertwining, writing his claim into her very cells. But beneath the pain was something else. Rightness. Her body recognized this mark as the one it was always meant to bear. No conflict, no rejection, no fighting against biology. Just acceptance, completion, the final piece of a puzzle clicking perfectly into place. The mark settled warm and permanent at her throat, and when Kieran pulled back, his eyes glowed with wolf light. Mine, he said, his voice carrying harmonics of alpha command and mate bond and pure possessive joy. Yours, Thalia agreed, feeling the mark pulse with magic. And you're mine too. That's how this works. Then claim me back, Kieran said, tilting his head to expose his own throat. Mark me as yours, so everyone knows we belong to each other. Thalia's wolf surged forward at the invitation. She'd never claimed anyone before. Dax had marked her in their political ceremony, but she'd never been offered the chance to reciprocate with her own mark. The intimacy of it, the equality, made her hands shake as she pulled Kieran down to her level. Her teeth found the junction of his throat and shoulder, and when she bit down, she poured everything into it. 2 years of longing, days of fear that she'd lose him before truly having him, and the overwhelming love that had been growing since that first meeting. Kieran groaned, his hands tightening on her waist, and Thalia felt his emotions flooding through the bond. Belonging, completion, fierce protection, and love so deep it had no bottom. When she released him, when she saw her mark settling into his skin, Thalia felt something shift in her chest. The mate bond, which had been pulling at her for 2 years, finally relaxed. Finally stopped straining toward an impossible distance. They were bound now. Truly, completely bound. Luna Thalia of Frost Peak, Valen announced, his voice thick with emotion. Welcome home. The pack erupted in howls, traditional wolf celebration that echoed through the chamber and out into the night. Even the skeptical wolves joined in, unable to resist the pull of a completed mate bond and the joy radiating from their alpha king. Stellan, Phoebe and Jasper rushed forward, abandoning all ceremonies to throw themselves at Thalia and Kieran with pup enthusiasm. "You're really our mama now," Jasper announced. "For real and forever." "For real and forever," Thalia agreed, scooping him up despite Kalla's probable disapproval. "Nothing's separating us now. Can we see the marks?" Phoebe asked with innocent curiosity. "Are they matching?" Kieran laughed, tilting his head so they could see. "Not matching exactly, but they're both real, and they're both permanent, and they mean your papa and your mama belong together now." "Good," Stellan said with satisfaction beyond his years. "You both look happier. Mama Marina used to say true mates make each other complete. I think she was right." Thalia's eyes filled with tears. "She was very right, little one." The celebration continued into the night. Food and drink, stories and laughter, pack members approaching cautiously to welcome their new Luna. Some were genuine, others merely polite, but Thalia accepted both with equal grace. She was Luna now. These were her wolves to lead and protect. And if some of them needed time to accept her, well, she'd proven she was patient. She could wait. Later, much later, when the celebration had wound down and the pups had been carried to bed by patient warriors, Kieran led Thalia to his private chambers. Their chambers now. The rooms were spacious but lived in, with evidence of 3 energetic pups everywhere, toys tucked in corners, drawings on walls, small boots kicked off haphazardly. It was a home, not just a residence, and Thalia felt her heart expand seeing it. "It's not much," Kieran said, suddenly uncertain. "Marina decorated most of it before she died. If you want to change things, make it more yours." "It's perfect," Thalia interrupted. "It's lived in and loved and full of your family."
Our family now.
"I wouldn't change a thing." She moved to the window, looking out over Frost Peak territory dusted with moonlight. Somewhere out there, Dax was returning to Emberclaw, carrying news of the successful mark-breaking and new alliance. Somewhere, 3 pups were dreaming of having a mother again. Somewhere, the moon was watching over all of them with ancient, knowing light. Kieran's arms came around her from behind, his chin resting on her shoulder, his mark pulsing warm against her throat. "I can feel everything," Thalia whispered. "Through the bond. Your emotions, your presence, even vague impressions of your thoughts. Is it always this intense?" "For the first few weeks, yes," Kieran said. "Eventually, you'll learn to regulate it, to create boundaries when you need privacy. But right now," he pressed a kiss to her marked throat. "Right now, the bond is settling, getting used to being completed after 2 years of strain. It's like a muscle that's finally allowed to relax." "It's overwhelming," Thalia admitted, "but also wonderful. Knowing exactly what you're feeling. Knowing I'm not alone in this anymore." "You're never alone," Kieran said fiercely. "Not as long as I'm breathing. You hear me, Thalia? You're mine now, and I take care of what's mine." "And you're mine," Thalia said, turning in his arms to face him. "Don't forget that part. This bond goes both ways. I protect what's mine too." Kieran's smile was soft, intimate. "I'm counting on it." He kissed her then, properly this time, without ceremony or audience. Just 2 mates finally allowed to explore the connection they'd been denied for so long. The kiss deepened, grew heated, and Thalia felt desire flooding through the bond from both directions. But beneath it was something even more powerful, belonging. She was home. Finally, truly home. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Kieran pressed his forehead to hers. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For what?" "For being brave enough to break Dax's mark. For choosing me even when it was dangerous. For saving my pups and becoming their mother. For," his voice cracked, "for giving me a second chance at happiness when I'd stopped believing it was possible." "You gave me the same thing," Thalia said. "A chance to be with my true mate. A family to love. A purpose beyond political duty. We saved each other, Kieran. Then let's keep saving each other," he said. "Every day for the rest of our lives." "Deal," Thalia whispered. They stayed at the window for a long time, wrapped in each other's arms, feeling the mate bond hum contentedly between them. Outside, Frost Peak slept peacefully under the moon's watch. Inside, two souls finally completed their long journey home. And in their beds, three small pups dreamed of a family made whole again, not by replacing what was lost, but by choosing to build something new from the ashes of grief. Tomorrow will bring challenges. Political complications from the broken alliance, pack members who needed convincing, the work of blending families and territories and lives. But tonight was perfect. Tonight was theirs. And that was enough. Chapter 9. Integration. The first crisis came 3 days after the claiming ceremony. Thalia was in the medical wing reviewing supply inventories, familiar work that helped ground her in this new territory, when Valen burst through the door, his expression grim. "Luna, we have a situation. The Border Patrol just intercepted an Emberclaw delegation. They're demanding entry to speak with you." Thalia's stomach dropped. She'd known this was coming, the political fallout from her broken mark and sudden claiming by Frost Peak's Alpha King. But she'd hoped for more time to establish herself before facing wolves who might see her as a traitor. "How many?" she asked, already moving toward the door. 6 warriors, 2 advisors, and Valen hesitated. "Your mother." Thalia stopped walking. "My mother is here?" "Leading the delegation, apparently. She's insisting on seeing you immediately, claiming she has the right as your dam to ensure you weren't coerced or harmed during the mark breaking." Of course her mother would come. Thalia should have anticipated it. Her family had arranged the marriage to Dax specifically for political advantage. Losing that alliance meant losing face, influence, and carefully constructed power dynamics. "Where's Kieran?" Thalia asked. "Command center with his military advisors. There's concern this could be a precursor to hostile action, so he's preparing defensive strategies just in case." "It's not hostile," Thalia said with more confidence than she felt. "My mother wouldn't come personally if she planned violence. She wants to assess the situation, probably try to convince me to return and repair the alliance." "And will you?" Valen's question was carefully neutral. "Return, I mean?" Thalia looked at him. This beta, who'd welcomed her warmly despite having every reason to be suspicious, and felt her resolve solidify. "This is my home now," she said simply. "Frost Peak, Kieran, the pups, this is where I belong. My mother can accept that or not, but I'm not leaving." Valen's smile was genuine. "Good. Because those pups have already redecorated your chambers with artwork, and removing it would break their hearts." Despite the tension, Thalia laughed. The pups had indeed covered every available surface with drawings, wolves and moons and families holding hands. Evidence of belonging, of being wanted. "Let's not keep my mother waiting then," Thalia said. "Where are they?" Formal receiving room. Alpha Kieran's orders were to treat them as diplomatic guests until their intentions became clear. The receiving room was elegant but not ostentatious, designed for treaty negotiations and important discussions. When Thalia entered, 8 pairs of eyes turned toward her with varying expressions. The warriors looked uncomfortable, clearly not thrilled about being in rival territory. The advisors, elderly wolves she recognized from Emberclaw councils, studied her with calculating assessment. And her mother, Rhiannon, stood at the center of the delegation, tall and imperious, her dark hair streaked with silver, her brown eyes sharp as obsidian. She was beautiful in a severe way, and she'd never been a warm mother, more concerned with duty and propriety than affection.
"Thalia."
Her mother's voice carried disappointment like a physical weight. "Look at you, marked by another alpha after everything your family sacrificed to arrange your first union." "Hello, Mother," Thalia said evenly. "I wasn't expecting you."
"Clearly."
"Or you might have sent word before destroying 3 years of careful political maneuvering." Rhiannon moved closer, her gaze fixing on the mark at Thalia's throat. Kieran's claiming scar, bold and permanent. Alpha Dax sent a messenger explaining what happened. That you'd met your true mate and convinced him to release you so you could bond with Frost Peak's king instead. The way she said true mate made it sound like a childish fantasy rather than biological reality. "It wasn't that simple," Thalia said. "The competing bonds were killing me, Mother." Slowly but surely. I had months, maybe a year, before my body gave out entirely. Breaking Dax's mark wasn't about politics, it was about survival. You could have come home. Let our healers attempt treatment. Instead, you ran to our rivals the moment you had the chance. Rhiannon's expression was cold. Do you understand what this has done to our family standing? To the alliances we'd built through your marriage? I understand that you're more concerned with political advantage than whether your daughter lives or dies, Thalia said, keeping her voice level despite the anger building in her chest. I nearly died in a blizzard saving 3 pups, mother. When Kieran found me, I was unconscious and minutes from complete shutdown. He brought me here because it was closer, because his healers could save me when yours were too far away. And conveniently fell into his bed within days, Rhiannon said sharply. I fell into my mate's arms, Thalia corrected, her own voice hardening now. After 2 years of living with a mark that didn't belong to me, of feeling the bond pull towards someone I couldn't have, of pretending duty mattered more than destiny. I'm sorry if that disappoints you, but I won't apologize for choosing to live. One of the advisors, Elder Finnick, ancient and cunning, stepped forward. Luna Thalia, your mother's concern, while perhaps harshly expressed, comes from a genuine place. Your sudden departure leaves Emberclaw vulnerable. The alliance with your family provided protection, trade advantages, and political leverage. Without that connection, we're exposed to potential threats. Then negotiate a new alliance, Thalia said. Alpha Kieran has already expressed willingness to work with Emberclaw directly. You don't need my marriage to maintain peaceful relations. Peace built on personal bonds is stronger than peace built on contracts, Finnick argued. Your presence there as Dax's Luna ensured our interests were protected. Now we have no guarantee Frostpeak won't use this situation to their advantage. You have my guarantee. Kieran's voice cut through the room as he entered, his presence immediately dominating the space. Luna Thalia is my mate and Frostpeak's Luna. Her former pack's well-being matters to her, which means it matters to me. Rhiannon's eyes narrowed as she assessed Kieran, Alpha King, widower, and now bonded to her daughter. Alpha Kieran, she said with cold politeness. How convenient that you discovered your true mate happened to be married to a rival Alpha. How fortuitous that circumstances forced her into your territory at the exact moment you could claim her. Mother, Thalia's voice carried Luna's command. She might be new to Frostpeak, but she'd been trained as Luna since childhood. Alpha Kieran saved my life, respected my choices, waited until I was healthy and certain before claiming myself. He's done nothing but honor the bond between us. A bond that shouldn't exist, Rhiannon said. You were already marked, already claimed. Mate bonds don't override sacred marks unless the mark is broken, which requires consent that Alpha Dax should never have given. Dax gave consent because keeping Thalia marked while she was bonded to someone else was killing her, Kieran said, his voice carrying Alpha authority. He chose her survival over political convenience. That takes courage most Alphas don't possess. It takes weakness, Rhiannon countered. A strong Alpha doesn't release his mate to a rival just because biology protests. A strong Alpha puts Luna's well-being above his own pride, Kieran shot back. Dax made the right choice, even though it cost him. I respect him for it. The room fell silent, tension crackling like lightning between the two Alphas. Finally, Finnick spoke again, his voice diplomatic. Perhaps we could discuss terms. Alpha Kieran, you mention willingness to negotiate directly with Emberclaw. What exactly are you proposing? Trade agreements similar to what existed under Thalia's marriage to Dax, Kieran said immediately. Border security cooperation. Shared medical resources. Thalia is a skilled healer, and she's expressed interest in establishing training exchanges between our medical wings. Territory disputes handled through neutral arbitration rather than violence. And what does Frostpeak gain from this arrangement? Finnick asked shrewdly. The same things Emberclaw gains: peaceful borders, economic cooperation, and a Luna who cares deeply about her former pack's prosperity. Kieran moved to stand beside Thalia, his hand finding hers. My mate's happiness matters to me. If helping Emberclaw thrive makes her happy, then it serves Frost Peak's interests. Rhiannon made a dismissive sound. How romantic. And how naive. To think personal feelings should dictate pack policy. How sad, Thalia said quietly. To think they shouldn't. Mother, you spent your entire life prioritizing politics over people. You arranged my marriage without asking if I wanted it. You never once asked if I was happy with Dax, if the mark was comfortable, if I was suffering. All you cared about was the alliance. She stepped forward, meeting her mother's cold gaze with her own steady one. I'm your daughter, not a game piece to be moved around a political board. And I'm done sacrificing my happiness for advantages that benefit everyone except me. You're being selfish, Rhiannon said. I'm alive, Thalia corrected. For the first time in 3 years, I'm truly alive. I have a mate who loves me, pups who need me, a pack that's welcoming me despite having every reason not to. That's not selfishness, Mother. That's finally understanding what actually matters. Rhiannon stared at her daughter for a long moment, something flickering in her eyes. Hurt, perhaps, or understanding she refused to acknowledge. You've changed, she said finally. I've grown, Thalia said. There's a difference. One of the warriors, Marcus, who'd been with Thalia during the blizzard, cleared his throat awkwardly. Luna, if I may. He looked uncomfortable being the center of attention, but continued anyway. We were there. Saren and I. We saw what happened in that storm. Luna Thalia didn't choose Frost Peak over Emberclaw for political reasons. She nearly died saving Alpha Kieran's pups when she could have left them and saved herself. He glanced at Kieran, then back to Rhiannon. That kind of sacrifice, it doesn't come from political calculation. It comes from mate instinct. From the bond recognizing something that needed protecting. If you'd seen her in that cave, giving everything she had to keep 3 children alive, you'd understand this wasn't a choice. It was destiny. Saren stepped forward as well, her warriors bearing solid and unapologetic. Marcus is right. I've served Emberclaw my entire life, but I won't stand here and watch Luna Thalia be shamed for surviving. She made the only choice that wouldn't have killed her. The mark breaking was necessary, and Alpha Dax knew it. That's why he consented. Rhiannon's expression tightened. You're both dangerously close to insubordination. They're both telling the truth. Thalia said firmly. And they deserve respect for it, not threats. Mother, you can accept this situation or not. That's your choice. But I'm not returning to Emberclaw as Luna. I'm not breaking my bond with Kieran. I'm not abandoning the pups who've already lost one mother. This is my home now, and that's final. The delegation stood in tense silence. Finally, Finnick spoke, his ancient eyes shrewd but not unkind. Lady Rhiannon, I suggest we accept Alpha Kieran's offer of direct negotiations. Luna Thalia has made her choice clear. Fighting it accomplishes nothing except damaging relationships we might otherwise preserve. The council won't be pleased, Rhiannon said stiffly. The council will adapt, Finnick said. They always do. And having friendly relations with Frost Peak through Luna Thalia's connection, even if she's no longer formally our Luna, provides advantages we shouldn't dismiss. Rhiannon looked at Thalia one last time, her expression unreadable. You'll regret this, she said quietly. When the politics become complicated, when his pack rejects you, when you realize passion isn't enough to sustain Luna's responsibilities, you'll regret choosing heart over duty. Maybe, Thalia said. But I'd rather regret choosing love than regret never having it at all. Her mother turned to leave, the delegation following. But at the door, she paused. Your father asked me to tell you he's proud, Rhiannon said without turning around. He said, her voice caught slightly. He said you're braver than he ever was, choosing happiness over expectation. That he wishes he'd had your courage when he was young. Then she was gone, leaving Thalia standing in the receiving room with tears streaming down her face. Kieran pulled her into his arms immediately, holding her while she shook with the weight of her family's rejection and her father's unexpected blessing. You did beautifully, he murmured against her hair. So strong, so certain. I'm so proud of you. She hates me, Thalia said brokenly. My own mother hates me for choosing you, She doesn't hate you. She's hurt because you chose differently than she would have. But Thalia, Kieran pulled back to look at her. Your father's proud. Marcus and Saren stood up for you. Elder Finnick advocated for acceptance. You're not as alone as you think. I know, Thalia whispered. I have you. I have Pups. I have Frost Peak. It's enough. It has to be enough. It's more than enough, Kieran said fiercely. It's everything. That evening, Thalia found herself in the Pups' shared playroom, watching them build an elaborate fort from blankets and furniture. They'd invited her to help, and she'd agreed despite her emotional exhaustion. Is Grandma Rhiannon mad at you? Stellan asked with his usual uncomfortable perceptiveness. We heard raised voices earlier. She's disappointed, Thalia said carefully. She wanted me to make different choices. But you chose us, Phoebe said with satisfaction. You chose to be our mama instead of going back to your old pack. I did, Thalia confirmed, because you three are exactly where I'm meant to be. Good, Jasper announced. Because we already told everyone at training that our new mama is the bravest wolf in the whole kingdom. If you left, we'd look silly. Thalia laughed despite her tears. Well, we certainly can't have that. She pulled all three pups into a hug, feeling their small bodies press against hers with complete trust. This was what she'd chosen. Not politics or power or her mother's approval.
Love. Family.
Home. And if that made her selfish in her mother's eyes, then so be it. She was finally, gloriously selfish. And she'd never been happier. Chapter 10. Proving Ground. 3 weeks into her tenure as Luna of Frost Peak, Thalia faced her first real test. The pack's primary healer, Linnea, had fallen gravely ill, some kind of aggressive infection that wasn't responding to standard treatments. With the medical wing's leadership compromised, panic was beginning to spread among wolves who depended on healing services. Thalia stood in the medical wing at dawn, reviewing Linnea's charts with growing concern. The infection was unusual, aggressive, and getting worse despite every conventional remedy they'd tried. We're losing her, Calla said quietly, her usual confidence shaken. I've tried everything I know, and nothing's working. By nightfall, the infection will reach her heart. After that, she didn't finish the sentence. Thalia studied the symptoms again, her healer's mind racing through possibilities. The fever pattern was irregular, spiking and dropping in ways that suggested magical contamination rather than natural illness. The skin discoloration followed no logical progression. And the way Linnea's energy felt, wrong, somehow corrupted at a fundamental level. It's not a natural infection, Thalia said slowly. It's curse sickness. Someone poisoned her with corrupted magic. Calla's eyes widened. Curse sickness? But who would, and why target Linnea? Maybe they weren't targeting Linnea specifically, Thalia said, her stomach dropping. Maybe they were targeting Frost Peak's medical capabilities. Take out the primary healer, throw the medical wing into chaos, weaken the pack from within. That's an act of war, Calla breathed. Or sabotage from within, Thalia said grimly. Either way, we need to cure her before she dies, and before whoever did this realizes we know what we're dealing with. Can you cure curse sickness? Calla asked. I've read about it, but I've never actually treated it. The texts say it requires a healer willing to draw the corruption into themselves temporarily, Thalia finished. Filter it through their own system, cleanse it and expel it. It's dangerous. If you're not strong enough or don't have enough control, the curse transfers to you instead. Then we can't risk it, Calla said immediately. Luna, you've been here 3 weeks. If something happens to you, if something happens to Linnea, this pack loses its primary healer, and I lose a wolf I'm supposed to protect, Thalia interrupted. I'm trained for this, Calla. My mother might have been cold, but she made sure I learned every healing technique possible, including the dangerous ones. She moved to Linnea's bedside, studying the unconscious healer's pale, sweat-soaked face. The older wolf had been kind to Thalia from the beginning, welcoming her warmly despite having every reason to resent a new Luna from a rival pack. I'm doing this, Thalia said with finality. But I need you to monitor my vitals. If the curse starts transferring to me instead of being cleansed, you'll have to knock me out and break the connection immediately. Kieran will kill me if something happens to you, Calla muttered, but she was already gathering equipment. Kieran will understand that Luna protects her pack, Thalia said, even when it's dangerous. She placed her hands over Linnea's heart, feeling for the curse's source. There, a knot of corrupted magic pulsing like a second, malevolent heartbeat. It was dark and oily, wrong in ways that made Thalia's wolf snarl with instinctive rejection. Here we go, she whispered, and opened herself to the infection. The curse hit her like poison, burning through her veins, trying to latch onto her life force and corrupt it from within. Thalia gritted her teeth and pulled harder, drawing the darkness out of Linnea's body and into her own. Her healer magic activated automatically, trying to filter the curse as it entered. But this was powerful magic, carefully crafted by someone who knew exactly what they were doing. It fought her, writhing and searching for weaknesses. Not today, Thalia thought grimly. You're not taking anyone else. She pulled harder, ignoring the burning pain spreading through her chest, the way her vision started to blur at the edges. The curse was massive, far more than should have been necessary to kill one healer. Whoever had done this wanted to make sure their target died slowly and obviously. Luna, your vitals are dropping, Calla warned. Heart rate increasing, temperature spiking. Not yet, Thalia managed through clenched teeth. Almost got it all. The final tendril of curse magic pulled free from Linnea's body and slammed into Thalia's. For a terrifying moment, she felt it trying to take root, trying to corrupt her the way it had corrupted Linnea. Then her magic surged, healer power backed by Luna authority and the strength of a completed mate bond, and crushed the curse. It shattered like glass, the corrupted magic fragmenting and dissipating harmlessly. Thalia gasped, her body shaking with the effort. But the curse was gone. Destroyed rather than transferred. It's done, she whispered, swaying dangerously. Check Linnea, check if she's breathing easier, Calla said, her hands moving over Linnea's body with practiced efficiency. Temperature dropping, color returning, infection markers clearing. Luna, you did it. You actually cured curse sickness. Good. Thalia managed, then promptly collapsed. She woke to Kieran's terrified face hovering over hers and 3 small pups crying at the foot of her bed. What were you thinking? Kieran's voice was rough with fear and anger. Calla said you drew curse sickness into your own body. Do you have any idea how dangerous that is? You could have died, Thalia. You could have left me after I just found you. But I didn't die, Thalia interrupted weakly. And Linnea is alive. That's what matters. You matter. Kieran's hands were shaking as they framed her face. You're my mate, their mother, Frost Peak's Luna. You can't just sacrifice yourself every time someone needs help. Yes, I can, Thalia said simply. That's what being Luna means. Protecting the pack, even when it's dangerous. Especially when it's dangerous. Mama, you scared us, Phoebe whispered, tears streaming down her small face. We thought you were going to die like our first mama did. Thalia's heart broke. She forced herself to sit up despite Kieran's protests and opened her arms. All 3 pups climbed into the bed, pressing against her with desperate need for reassurance. I'm okay, she said softly. I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. You promised, Jasper said accusingly. You promised you'd stay with us. Breaking promises is bad. I didn't break my promise. I'm still here, aren't I? Thalia kissed his forehead. I was just doing my job, protecting wolves who needed help. Your job is to not die, Stellan said with 6-year-old logic. That's the most important job. He's not wrong, Kieran muttered. A commotion at the door announced Valen's arrival, his expression grave. Behind him stood Linnea, weak and leaning heavily on a younger healer, but alive and conscious. Luna Thalia, Linnea said, her voice rough but sincere. You saved my life. Calla told me what you did, how dangerous it was. I don't know how to thank you. You don't need to thank me, Thalia said. You're packed. I will protect the pack. She also nearly died doing it, Kieran added darkly, which we're going to discuss later. Alpha King, there's more, Valen interrupted. Linnea remembers who gave her the curse. It wasn't an accident or an outside attack. The room fell silent. Even the pups stopped fidgeting. Who? Kieran's voice carried alpha command. Elder Torvin, Linnea said quietly. One of your senior advisors. He brought me tea 3 days ago and said it was a gift to welcome Luna Thalia. I thought nothing of it. He served Frost Peak for decades. But when I drank it, I felt the curse take root immediately. I tried to reach for help, but by then I was too weak. Torvin. Kieran looked stunned. He's been with Frost Peak since before I was born. Why would he? Because he opposed your claim of Luna Thalia, Valen said grimly. He was vocal about it in the council meetings you didn't attend, said bringing in an Emberclaw Luna was dangerous, that she'd divide loyalties, that she couldn't be trusted. He was outvoted, but clearly he wasn't satisfied with just losing the argument. He tried to kill Linnea to undermine me, Thalia said slowly, understanding dawning. Take out the primary healer. Make it look like Frost Peak's medical wing couldn't handle a serious illness. Prove that losing me as backup would be catastrophic. Then when I tried to save her and failed, because curse sickness shouldn't be curable by normal means, it would look like I was incompetent. Either way, my position as Luna would be compromised. Except you succeeded, Kieran said, pride and terror warring in his voice. You saved Linnea and proved your worth as healer and Luna simultaneously, while almost dying in the process, Valen added, which proves Torvin's willing to kill to achieve his goals. Alpha King, this is sedition, possibly treason. Bring him to the judgment chamber, Kieran said, his voice cold with alpha authority. Immediately. And Valen, make sure he's secured. If he's willing to curse Linnea, he might try something desperate when confronted. After Valen left, Kieran turned back to Thalia, his expression complex. You saved her life and exposed a traitor in one move, he said quietly. The pack will hear about this within the hour. By nightfall, every wolf in Frost Peak will know their new Luna risked herself to save one of their own. I didn't do it for political points, Thalia said. I know. That's what makes it powerful. Kieran's hand found hers, squeezing gently. You acted like Luna should, putting pack welfare above personal safety. Even wolves who were skeptical of you can't deny that kind of dedication. Some still will, Thalia said realistically. Torvin won't be the only one who resents me. Then we deal with them as they arise, Kieran said firmly.
Together.
As partners. The judgment chamber was crowded when they arrived an hour later. Word had spread fast, and wolves gathered to witness how their Alpha King would handle betrayal from a trusted elder. Torvin stood in the center, secured by warriors, his weathered face defiant despite being caught. He was old, ancient even, his gray fur shot through with white, but his eyes burned with conviction. Elder Torvin, Kieran said, his voice carrying through the chamber with alpha command. You stand accused of cursing healer Linnea with intent to kill, and of attempting to undermine Luna Thalia's position through sabotage. How do you answer these charges? I answer that I did what was necessary to protect Frost Peak, Torvin said, his voice strong despite his age. You brought an outsider into our pack, Alpha King. An Emberclaw wolf who was marked by their alpha mere weeks ago. How can we trust her loyalty? How can we be certain she's not a spy, a saboteur, a threat to everything we've built? So, you decided to kill an innocent healer to prove a point? Thalia asked, stepping forward. Linnea has served Frost Peak for 20 years. What did she do to deserve being poisoned with curse sickness? She was expendable, Torvin said coldly. A sacrifice necessary to expose you for the danger you represent. If you'd failed to save her, it would have proven my point, that you're not strong enough to be our Luna. And if you died trying, well, he shrugged, that would have solved the problem even more efficiently. Growls erupted throughout the chamber. Even wolves who'd been skeptical of Thalia looked horrified at Torvin's casual willingness to murder. You're wrong about her. Stellan's small voice cut through the noise. The 6-year-old had insisted on attending, and now he stood beside Thalia, his ice blue eyes, so like his father's, fixed on Torvin with unusual gravity. Luna Thalia saved us when we were dying. She gave us all her warmth, even though it almost killed her. She chose to be our mama, when she could have gone back to her old pack. She's not a danger. You are. A child doesn't understand pack politics, Torvin said dismissively. But he understands sacrifice, Kieran said, his voice deadly quiet. Something you've apparently forgotten in your quest to maintain traditions that serve no one. Elder Torvin, by the authority granted to me as Alpha King of Frost Peak, I strip you of your title and position. You will be exiled from this territory immediately, allowed to take only what you can carry. If you ever return, you'll be treated as an enemy combatant. You're making a mistake, Torvin spat. She'll betray you eventually. Outsiders always do. Then I'll deal with it when it happens, Kieran said. But I won't tolerate traitors who harm innocent wolves to prove theoretical points. You're finished here, Torvin. Get out of my sight. Warriors escorted the elder out, his protests fading as distance grew. When silence fell over the chamber, Kieran turned to address the assembled pack. Let this be clear to everyone, he said, his voice carrying to every corner. Luna Thalia is my true mate, Frost Peak's Luna, and mother to my pups. She risked her life to save healer Linnea from cursed sickness that should have been impossible to cure. She exposed a traitor who was willing to murder to undermine her position. Anyone who questions her dedication to this pack after today is welcome to challenge me directly, because I will defend my mate's honor with everything I have. Thalia's throat tightened with emotion as she felt the pack's mood shift. Not universal acceptance, that would take time, but respect. Recognition that she'd earned her position through action rather than just claiming. Thank you, she said quietly to Kieran as the crowd dispersed. You earned it yourself, Kieran said. I just made sure everyone knew it. That night, after the pups were in bed and the crisis had settled into uncomfortable memory, Thalia stood in their chambers staring at her reflection. The mark at her throat pulsed with warmth, Kieran's claim, permanent and right. She'd passed her first real test as Luna. Saved a life, exposed a traitor, proved her dedication to wolves who'd had every reason to doubt her. But more importantly, she'd proven something to herself. She belonged here. Not because of the mate bond or political necessity, but because she'd chosen this pack, these wolves, this life. And she'd keep choosing it, every day, for as long as the moon granted her. Thinking deep thoughts. Kieran asked, appearing behind her to wrap his arms around her waist. Thinking I made the right choice, Thalia said, leaning back against his chest. Breaking Dax's mark, accepting yours, becoming Luna here. It was all worth it. Even the parts where you almost died? Kieran asked wryly. Even those, Thalia confirmed. Because they led me here. To you, to the pups, to home. Home, Kieran repeated softly. I like the sound of that. Good, Thalia said. Because you're stuck with me now. For better or worse, through cursed sickness and political complications and whatever else the universe throws at us. I wouldn't have it any other way, Kieran said, pressing a kiss to her marked throat. And as they stood there, wrapped in each other's arms with the mate bond humming contentedly between them, Thalia knew with absolute certainty. She was exactly where she was meant to be. Finally, completely home. Chapter 11. Threads of the Past. 2 months after the curse sickness incident, Thalia received an unexpected visitor. She was in the training yard watching Stellan practice his defensive stances when Balin approached, his expression carefully neutral, which meant something complicated was happening. Luna, there's someone at the border requesting entry. She says she's a friend from your past and that it's urgent. Thalia's stomach tightened. Did she give a name? Paloma. She claims you trained together as apprentice healers. The name hit Thalia like a physical blow. Paloma, her closest friend before the arranged marriage, before politics had torn her life into acceptable pieces. They'd been inseparable once, 2 young healers dreaming of all the wolves they'd save, all the good they'd do. Then Thalia had been married to Dax, and Paloma had disappeared. No goodbye, no explanation, just gone. Let her in, Thalia said, her voice steadier than she felt. Escort her to the private gardens. I'll meet her there. The gardens were peaceful, a space Kieran had shown her weeks ago, explaining it had been his first mate's favorite place. Thalia had been honored by the gesture, understanding he was sharing something precious rather than trying to replace Marina's memory. Now she waited among winter roses and frost-touched vines, her heart racing with questions she'd carried for 3 years. Paloma appeared like a ghost from the past, tall and graceful, her auburn hair longer than Thalia remembered, her green eyes holding shadows that hadn't been there before. She wore simple traveling clothes, and there was a wariness in her posture that spoke of hard-earned survival instincts. Thalia, Paloma breathed, her voice cracking. I wasn't sure you'd see me. After everything. After I left without explaining. Why did you leave? The question burst out before Thalia could stop it. One day we were planning to open a joint healing practice, and the next you were gone. No message, no goodbye, nothing. Paloma's eyes filled with tears. Because I couldn't watch you marry him. Couldn't stand beside you while you bound yourself to an alpha you didn't love for politics that didn't care if you were happy. So you abandoned me instead? Thalia's voice was harder than she intended. When I needed my best friend most, you just disappeared. I know. I was a coward. Paloma moved closer, her hands twisted together. But Thalia, there's something I never told you. Something I should have said years ago, but couldn't find the courage for. A cold sense of foreboding settled in Thalia's chest. What? Dax is my true mate. The world tilted. What? Thalia whispered. Alpha Dax. The male you married. Paloma's voice was breaking now, years of pain spilling out. I met him 4 months before your engagement was announced. We recognized the bond immediately, knew we were meant for each other. But he was already arranged to marry you, and his Pax alliance with your family was too important to break. Thalia sat down heavily on a stone bench, her mind reeling. Dax's true mate. The one he wouldn't talk about. That was you. That was me, Paloma confirmed. He told me he couldn't claim me. That duty required him to honor the arrangement with your family. So I left, ran away to the Northern Territories where I wouldn't have to hear about your wedding, wouldn't have to watch my mate bond to someone else. Why are you telling me this now? Thalia asked, her voice hollow. Because I heard what happened. That you broke Dax's mark and bonded with your true mate instead. That you chose destiny over duty. Paloma's smile was sad. You were always braver than me, Thalia. I ran for my mate bond because I couldn't have it. You fought for yours even when it nearly killed you. I didn't know, Thalia said. All those years of marriage, of living with Dax, and I never knew I was the thing standing between him and his true mate. He never told me it was you. He was protecting me, Paloma said. And probably protecting you too. What good would it have done for you to know? You were both trapped. Telling you would have just made everyone more miserable. Thalia's hands shook as she processed this revelation. 3 years of marriage, of quiet partnership with Dax, and all along he'd been denying his true mate, her best friend, to honor a political arrangement. Is that why you're here? Thalia asked carefully. Because now that I've broken the mark, Dax is free to claim you? Partially, Paloma admitted. But also because I missed you, Thalia. You were my best friend, my sister in all but blood. Losing you hurt almost as much as losing Dax. And I hoped, maybe now that we're not in competition for the same male, we could repair what was broken between us. Before Thalia could respond, Kieran appeared at the garden entrance, his ice-blue eyes assessing Paloma with alpha wariness. Everything all right? He asked, though his tone suggested he'd sensed Thalia's emotional turbulence through the bond. Kieran, this is Paloma. An old friend. Thalia stood, grateful for his presence even as her mind continued spinning. Paloma, this is Alpha King Kieran. My mate. Your true mate, Paloma said, moving forward to offer a proper greeting. I'm glad you found him. Glad you were brave enough to claim what was rightfully yours. Kieran's gaze sharpened. You're connected to this somehow. To Thalia's past with Dax. She's Dax's true mate, Thalia said quietly. The one he's been denying for years. She came to tell me and to She looked at Paloma. What exactly are you asking for? Paloma took a deep breath. Permission to see Dax. To speak with him now that he's free of his mark to you. I know it's complicated, politically and personally. But I've waited for years, Thalia. I'm tired of running from destiny. You don't need my permission, Thalia said. Dax and I ended our bond months ago. He's free to claim whoever he wants. But you're friends with him still, Paloma pressed. I heard you negotiated an alliance between Frost Peak and Emberclaw. That you maintain communication. If you tell him not to see me, he'll listen. Why would I do that? Thalia asked, genuinely confused. Because I abandoned you when you needed me most, Paloma said, her voice breaking. Because I was selfish and cowardly, and I don't deserve your forgiveness, let alone your help. Thalia was quiet for a long moment, feeling Kieran's supportive presence behind her, processing 3 years of hurt and confusion and missing her best friend. You're right that you abandoned me, she said finally. And yes, that hurt. For a long time, I wondered what I'd done wrong, why you couldn't even say goodbye. Paloma flinched. But I also understand why you left, Thalia continued. Watching your true mate bond to someone else, even if that someone was your best friend, would have been unbearable. You did what you needed to survive. I can't fault you for that. She moved closer, meeting Paloma's tear-filled eyes. I won't stand between you and Dax. If he wants to claim you now that he's free, you have my blessing. Actually, a smile tugged at her lips. You have more than that. You have my active encouragement. Dax deserves to be happy. And if his happiness is you, then I hope he's brave enough to reach for it. You mean that? Paloma whispered. I mean it, Thalia confirmed. But Paloma, if we're going to repair our friendship, you can't run away again. No more disappearing when things get complicated. We face difficulties together or not at all. Together, Paloma agreed, pulling Thalia into a fierce hug. I promise. No more running. After Paloma left, escorted by Valen toward Emberclaw territory with messages for Dax, Kieran pulled Thalia close, his chin resting on top of her head. That was generous of you, he said. Giving your blessing for Dax to claim the female who was once your best friend. It wasn't generous, Thalia said. It was right. They're true mates, Kieran. They deserve the same happiness we've found. I won't be the thing that stands between them anymore. Still, Kieran pressed a kiss to her hair. Some wolves would have held grudges, used their influence to make things difficult. Some wolves haven't experienced what it's like to finally claim their true mate after years of denial, Thalia countered. I know exactly how painful that separation is. I wouldn't wish it on anyone, especially not Dax, who was kind enough to release me when I needed freedom. 3 days later, word reached Frost Peak that Alpha Dax of Emberclaw had claimed Luna Paloma in a ceremony witnessed by both packs. The mark-breaking and new claiming had been completed without complication, and Emberclaw celebrated having a Luna who was genuinely loved by their Alpha. How do you feel about it? Kieran asked that evening as they prepared for bed. Relieved, Thalia said honestly. Knowing Dax is happy makes the guilt easier to carry. I spent 3 years married to him, knowing I was keeping him from his true mate even though I didn't know who she was. Now he has what he was always meant to have. She moved to the window, looking out over Frost Peak territory dusted with fresh snow. We all ended up where we belonged, she continued. Dax with Paloma, me with you. It's like the universe was just waiting for us to be brave enough to choose destiny over duty. Speaking of destiny, Kieran said, coming up behind her with a mischievous expression. I have something to tell you. Should I be worried? Thalia asked, turning to face him. Depends on how you feel about chaos. His smile was soft, intimate. Kala confirmed it this morning. You're pregnant, Thalia. About 6 weeks along. The world stopped. Pregnant, Thalia breathed, her hand moving automatically to her stomach. We're having a pup? We're having a pup, Kieran confirmed, his voice thick with emotion. Our pup. Yours and mine, born from a bond that was worth fighting for. Tears streamed down Thalia's face as the magnitude of it hit her. She'd never thought she'd have children, had believed her years with Dax would remain childless because bringing Pups into a loveless bond seemed cruel. But this was different. This was a child conceived in love, in a bond that was right and real and chosen freely. A pup who would grow up knowing both parents wanted them desperately, who would have siblings who already loved them, who would be born into a family built on courage and sacrifice and the willingness to fight for happiness. The pups will be thrilled, Thalia managed through tears. Stellan's been asking when they'd get a baby sibling. He claims 6-year-olds are excellent with infants, and we should trust him with all diaper duties. Kieran laughed, pulling her close. I'm sure he'll change his mind after the first explosive diaper. But yes, they'll be thrilled. We'll tell them tomorrow. Let them be the first to know they're becoming big siblings officially. That night, wrapped in Kieran's arms with his mark warm at her throat and new life growing inside her, Thalia reflected on the journey that had brought her here. The arranged marriage that had nearly broken her. The mate bond that had pulled her toward impossible love. The blizzard that had forced choices she'd been avoiding. The mark breaking that had freed her to choose destiny over duty. All of it, every painful step, every impossible decision, every moment of doubt and fear had led her to this. To a mate who loved her fiercely. To 3 pups who called her mama without hesitation. To a pack that had accepted her despite having every reason not to. To new life growing inside her, proof that choosing love over obligation had been worth every sacrifice. She thought about Dax, hopefully happy now with Paloma by his side. Thought about her mother, still disapproving but perhaps eventually understanding. Thought about all the wolves who doubted her, who'd questioned whether an outsider could truly become Luna. Let them doubt. She'd proven herself through action, through sacrifice, through the willingness to risk everything for wolves who needed her. She was Luna of Frost Peak, mate to an Alpha King, mother to pups who'd already claimed her heart, and another growing beneath it. She was home. Finally, completely, irrevocably home. And nothing, not politics or doubt or the complicated threads of the past, would ever make her regret the choices that had brought her here. I love you, she whispered to Kieran in the darkness. I love you too, he murmured back, his hand finding hers and lacing their fingers together. My brave, selfless, impossible mate. Thank you for fighting your way to me. Thank you for being worth fighting for, Thalia said. And as sleep claimed them both, the mate bond hummed contentedly between them, a reminder of destiny fulfilled, of love chosen freely, of family built on courage rather than obligation. Tomorrow will bring new challenges. But tonight, they were simply 2 souls who'd found each other against impossible odds. And that was more than enough. Chapter 12, New Beginnings. Spring arrived in Frost Peak with unexpected gentleness, snow melting into streams that sang through the territory, flowers pushing through thawing ground, and everywhere the sense of renewal that came with surviving another harsh winter. Thalia's pregnancy was progressing beautifully, her healer's body adapting to the changes with remarkable ease. At 4 months along, she was showing enough that the entire pack knew their Luna carried the Alpha King's heir. The reaction had been overwhelmingly positive. Even wolves who'd initially been skeptical of her now saw the pregnancy as proof of her commitment to Frost Peak. She wasn't just their Luna by claiming, she was building their future, literally growing the next generation of their line. You're glowing, Calla said during a routine checkup, her hands moving over Thalia's swollen belly with practiced efficiency. The pup is strong, healthy, and growing perfectly. And your vitals are excellent, better than most pregnancies I've monitored. The mate bond helps, Thalia said, smiling as she felt the pup kick against Calla's touch. Kieran's been insufferably protective, making sure I rest, eat properly, and don't overwork myself in the medical wing. As he should be, Calla said firmly. You have a tendency to sacrifice yourself for others, Luna. Someone needs to make sure you're taking care of yourself too. A commotion outside the medical wing drew their attention. Excited voices, running feet, the distinctive sound of pups who discovered something fascinating. Mama, come quick. Phoebe's voice carried through the corridor. There's a surprise. Thalia exchanged glances with Calla, then carefully stood and made her way to the entrance. What she found made her breath catch. Standing in the courtyard, looking nervous and hopeful, were Dax and Paloma, and between them, holding both their hands, was a small girl who couldn't be more than 4 years old. "Thalia," Dax said, his expression warm but cautious. "I hope this isn't a bad time. We needed to see you." "It's not a bad time," Thalia said, moving closer despite her confusion. "But who?" "This is Neve," Paloma said softly, kneeling beside the small girl. "Our daughter." Thalia's mind spun. "Your daughter? But you've only been claimed for 3 months. How?" "She's 4, Dax said quietly. "Born before I married you, actually. Before the arrangement was even finalized." Understanding crashed over Thalia like cold water. "You and Paloma, you were together before the political marriage. She was already pregnant when you claimed me." "We met 4 years ago," Paloma confirmed, her voice shaking. "Recognized the mate bond immediately and couldn't resist it. I got pregnant, and we were planning to run away together, forget politics and pack alliances, and just be together. But then my family insisted on the marriage to your family," Dax continued, his expression pained. "The alliance was too important, the political advantages too significant. I was told in no uncertain terms that refusing would be seen as betrayal of my pack's interests. So you let them believe the pregnancy was a mistake with an unnamed she-wolf," Thalia said slowly, pieces clicking together. "Acknowledged Neve as your heir, but never revealed who her mother was." "I couldn't," Dax said. "If they'd known Paloma was my true mate, my family would have forced me to reject the bond entirely, possibly exile her to remove the temptation. At least this way, Neve was acknowledged, and Paloma could stay in the territory as her caretaker, even if we couldn't be together publicly." Thalia looked at the small girl. Neve had Dax's dark eyes and Paloma's auburn hair, and she was watching Thalia with the serious intensity of a child who'd learned too young that adult emotions were complicated. "You lived 3 years keeping your daughter secret," Thalia said, not quite able to process the magnitude of the sacrifice. "Raising her apart from each other, pretending you were just alpha and citizen rather than mates and parents." "We did what we had to do to protect her," Paloma said, pulling Neve closer. "But now that you've broken the mark, now that Dax and I are properly claimed, we wanted Neve to know her heritage. Wanted her to understand she's not a secret or a mistake, but a child born from love even, if the timing was impossible. And we wanted her to meet you," Dax added. "The female who was brave enough to break the chains we couldn't, who gave us the freedom to finally be together properly. Neve deserves to know the whole story, including the part where you chose happiness over duty and inspired us to do the same." Neve looked up at Thalia with curious eyes. "Are you the wolf who saved my papa? Mama says you're very brave." "I didn't save your papa," Thalia said gently, kneeling with some difficulty due to her pregnancy. "I just set him free, so he could choose his own happiness instead of what others expected." "Like a hero," Neve said with childlike logic. "Like someone who understood what it meant to be trapped," Thalia corrected. By this time, Stellan, Phoebe, and Jasper had gathered around, examining Neve with the frank curiosity of children meeting potential playmates. "You're really small," Jasper announced. "How old are you?" 4, Neve said proudly. "Almost 5. "We're 6 and 5, Stellan said, gesturing to himself and his siblings. "Do you know how to climb trees? Because we have the best climbing trees in the whole kingdom." "I don't know how to climb trees," Neve admitted. "We'll teach you," Phoebe said immediately. "If your mama and papa say it's okay. We're very good teachers." Thalia watched the pups interact, feeling Kieran's presence before he spoke. "Alpha Dax, Luna Paloma," Kieran said, his tone diplomatic but warm. "This is an unexpected visit, though I assume it's more than just a social call." "We came to propose something," Dax said, straightening to alpha posture. "The alliance between Frost Peak and Emberclaw has been beneficial for both packs. Trade is thriving, border disputes have decreased, and our wolves are learning to see each other as potential allies rather than automatic enemies." "Agreed," Kieran said. The alliance has exceeded expectations. We'd like to strengthen it further, Paloma said. With a gesture that shows both packs were committed to peaceful cooperation for the next generation. What kind of gesture? Thalia asked, though she was beginning to suspect. A fostering exchange, Dax said. Neve would spend time here in Frost Peak, learning your ways, training with your pups, building connections that will last her lifetime. And in return, we'd welcome one of your pups to Emberclaw for similar education. The suggestion hung in the air, weighted with political implications and personal significance. You want our pups to grow up together, Thalia said slowly. To see each other as family rather than rivals. Exactly, Paloma confirmed. The old generation built walls through forced marriages and political maneuvering. The new generation could build bridges through genuine friendship and understanding. Kieran looked at Thalia, a silent question in his eyes. This was her former pack, her former mate, her complicated history. He'd support whatever she decided, but the choice had to be hers. How long are we talking about? Thalia asked. For the fostering exchanges? 3 months at a time, Dax said. Enough to build real connections, but not so long the pups feel abandoned by their parents. They'd return home regularly, maintain family bonds, but also develop relationships across pack lines. Stellan would be the obvious choice, Kieran said thoughtfully. As heir to Frost Peak, he needs to understand diplomatic relations. And he's old enough to handle being away from home for extended periods. I'll do it, Stellan said immediately, stepping forward with his characteristic seriousness. If it helps keep peace between the packs, if it means Neve and I can be friends instead of enemies when we grow up, I'll do it. Thalia felt her throat tighten with pride. 6 years old, and already understanding the weight of leadership, the importance of sacrifice for the greater good. We'd need to establish rules, she said, her healer's practicality kicking in. Clear expectations for safety, education, communication between packs. The pups would need to know they could return home anytime they felt unsafe or homesick. Absolutely, Paloma agreed. This only works if everyone feels secure and valued. They spent the next hour negotiating details, when the exchanges would begin, what training would be provided, how often families could visit. Slowly, carefully, they built a framework for something unprecedented. 2 former rival packs actively working to raise the next generation as allies. As the discussion wound down and Dax and Paloma prepared to leave, Neve approached Thalia shyly. Lady Thalia, the small girl said, thank you for letting my mama and papa be together. Mama says she was sad for a long time, but now she smiles again. That's because of you. Thalia's eyes filled with tears, pregnancy hormones making her more emotional than usual. Your mama and papa were always meant to be together, sweetheart. I'm just glad they finally can be. After they left, after the pups had exhausted themselves playing and been herded off to bed, Thalia stood in the courtyard watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and pink. Kieran found her there, wrapping his arms around her from behind, his hands settling protectively over her swollen belly. You handled that beautifully, he said. Creating an alliance through fostering exchanges, it's brilliant. Revolutionary, actually. It's necessary, Thalia said. The old ways, forced marriages, political chains, sacrificing happiness for advantage, they nearly destroyed all of us. If we want a better future for our pups, we have to build it ourselves. Speaking of our pup, Kieran's hand moved over her belly, feeling the life growing there. Have you thought about names? I have, actually, Thalia said. If it's a girl, Marina. After your first mate. She should be honored, remembered, and part of our family story. Kieran's breath caught. Thalia, you don't have to. I want to. Thalia interrupted gently. Marina gave you 3 beautiful pups and loved you well before she died. She's part of your history, part of what made you who you are. Our daughter deserves to carry that legacy. And if it's a boy? Kieran asked, his voice rough with emotion.
Cashin, Thalia said.
It means clever, resilient. I want our son to be smart enough to choose happiness over duty, strong enough to fight for what matters. Marina or Cashin, Kieran repeated, pulling her closer. Perfect names for a pup who'll grow up knowing both parents chose love over obligation. who'll learn that happiness isn't selfish, it's essential. They stood together as the sun set completely and stars began appearing overhead. The same stars that had watched over Thalia in that cave, watched over her mark breaking, watched over every impossible choice that had led her here. Do you ever regret it? Kieran asked quietly. The path you took to get here? The pain you endured? Never, Thalia said immediately. Every painful step, every impossible choice, every moment of doubt, they all led me exactly where I needed to be. To you, to the pups, to this life we're building together. She turned in his arms, meeting his ice-blue eyes in the gathering darkness. I'd do it all again, she said. Every sacrifice, every risk, every moment of fear. Because this, she gestured to encompass everything. The territory, the home, the family, the life growing inside her. This is worth fighting for. This is worth choosing, again and again. I love you, Kieran said, the words simple but weighted with everything they'd survived to be together. I love you too, Thalia said. My mate, my alpha, my home. They kissed as the first stars appeared, as the mate bond hummed contentedly between them, as their pup kicked strong and healthy beneath Thalia's heart. Somewhere in Emberclaw territory, Dax and Paloma were probably doing the same, finally together, finally free to love without barriers. Somewhere in the northern woods, the cave where Thalia had nearly died still stood, a monument to sacrifice and the moment everything changed. And somewhere in the future, the pups who'd grown up knowing their parents had chosen love over duty would build a world where such choices weren't revolutionary, just normal. But that was tomorrow's story. Tonight was about two souls who'd fought impossible odds to be together. A family built on courage rather than convenience. About the understanding that happiness wasn't a luxury or a selfish indulgence, but a fundamental right worth any sacrifice. Tonight was about being home. And that, Thalia thought as Kieran led her inside with gentle hands and protective devotion, was more than enough. It was everything. Chapter 13. The Birth. Summer arrived in its full glory. Warm winds carrying the scent of wildflowers, long days filled with golden light, and everywhere the sense of abundance that came with the season of growth. Thalia was 8 months pregnant now, her belly round and heavy with the life she carried. The pup was active, kicking and rolling with such vigor that Kieran swore he could see tiny feet pressing against her skin from the inside. Definitely has her energy, Kieran said one evening, his hands splayed across her belly as their pup performed acrobatics. Already training to keep us awake at all hours. Or your stubbornness, Thalia countered, wincing as a particularly strong kick connected with her ribs. Determined to make their presence known whether we're ready or not. The entire pack had rallied around their pregnant Luna with touching devotion. Warriors checked on her constantly, healers monitored her vitals daily, and the pups, Stellan, Phoebe, and Jasper, had become impossibly protective. Mama needs to rest, Stellan would announce with alpha authority whenever anyone suggested Thalia do anything more strenuous than sitting. The baby needs her to be strong. I've been informed by a 6-year-old that I need to rest, Thalia told Kala during one of her checkups, amusement coloring her voice. Apparently, he's the expert on pregnancy now. He's not wrong, Kala said, her hands glowing with healer magic as she examined Thalia. You're in the final stretch, Luna. Everything looks perfect, the pup is positioned correctly, your body is preparing for labor, and your vitals are excellent. But you need to conserve energy. Birth is demanding even under the best circumstances. When? Thalia asked. How much longer? Days, maybe a week, Kala estimated. The pup will come when they're ready. Your body will know. 2 days later, Thalia woke at dawn to cramping that stole her breath. She lay still for a moment, assessing. Not just normal late pregnancy discomfort, this was different. Rhythmic. Purposeful. Her body is preparing for the monumental task ahead. Labor. Kieran, she whispered, shaking his shoulder gently. Kieran, wake up. He was alert immediately, alpha instincts kicking in. What's wrong? Are you hurt? Is the pup? The pup is coming, Thalia said, another contraction gripping her abdomen. We need to get to the medical wing. Now. The next hours blurred together in waves of pain and purpose. Kala and her team worked with practiced efficiency, monitoring contractions, checking dilation, and preparing everything needed for the birth. Kieran never left her side, his hand gripping hers, his presence through the mate bond an anchor of strength and love. "You're doing beautifully," he murmured during a particularly brutal contraction. "So strong, so brave. Just a little longer." "Easy for you to say," Thalia gasped. "You're not the one trying to push a pup the size of a melon through." She cut off, crying out as another wave of pain crashed through her. "Luna, you're almost there," Kala said, positioned between Thalia's legs. "I can see the head. Next contraction, I need you to push with everything you have." Thalia pushed, her entire body straining with the effort. Through the pain and exhaustion, she felt the mate bond blazing, Kieran pouring strength into her, supporting her with everything he had. "Again," Kala commanded. "Push." Thalia pushed again, and suddenly, relief. The pup slipped free with a rush of fluid and blood, and Kala's triumphant cry filled the medical wing. "It's a girl. Luna, you have a daughter." The baby's first wail was the most beautiful sound Thalia had ever heard, strong, healthy, full of outrage at being forced from her warm cocoon into the cold world. "A daughter," Kieran breathed, his voice breaking. "We have a daughter." Kala worked quickly, cleaning the baby and checking her vitals before placing her on Thalia's chest. The tiny girl was perfect, dark hair like Kieran's, but her eyes, when they opened briefly, were Thalia's warm brown. She was small but fierce, already displaying the determination that would mark her entire life. "Hello, Marina," Thalia whispered, tears streaming down her face. "We've been waiting for you." The pup, Marina, quieted at her mother's voice, her tiny hand curling around Thalia's finger with surprising strength. "She's perfect," Kieran said, his own tears falling freely now. "Absolutely perfect. Just like her mother." A soft knock at the door announced Valen's presence. "Alpha King, the pups are asking if they can meet their sister. They've been waiting outside for hours, driving the warriors to distraction with questions." Kieran looked at Thalia, who nodded despite her exhaustion. "Let them in. They should meet her while she's still new." Stellan, Phoebe, and Jasper entered with unusual quiet, their eyes wide with wonder as they approached the bed. They'd been prepared for this, had attended lessons about new babies, had been told their sister would be tiny and fragile and need gentle handling. But nothing had prepared them for the reality of seeing their mama holding a brand new pup. "She's so small," Phoebe whispered, reaching out a careful finger to touch Marina's cheek. "Smaller than my dolls." "Can she do anything yet?" Jasper asked. "Like walk or play?" "Not yet, little one," Thalia said softly. "Right now, she mostly sleeps and eats and needs her family to keep her safe. But in time, she'll grow strong. And you three will teach her everything she needs to know." "I'll teach her how to track," Stellan announced with 6-year-old confidence. "And how to be brave when things are scary." "I'll teach her about healing herbs," Phoebe said. "Like you taught me, Mama." "I'll teach her how to make Papa laugh," Jasper added. "That's important too." Kieran gathered all of them close, his 3 older pups and Thalia holding their newborn daughter, and felt his heart expand with a love so fierce it bordered on pain. "This is our family," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "All of us together, built on courage and sacrifice and the willingness to fight for happiness." Marina will grow up knowing she was wanted desperately, that her birth represents everything we fought to achieve. "Will she know about me?" a small voice asked from the doorway. Everyone turned to find Neve standing there, accompanied by Paloma. The 4-year-old looked uncertain, as if unsure whether she belonged in this intimate family moment. "Neve," Jasper scrambled over immediately. "Come see the baby. She's our new sister." "But I'm not really your family," Neve said quietly. "Not like you 3 are." "Your family in every way that matters," Thalia said firmly. "Come here, sweetheart. Come meet Marina." Neve approached slowly, Paloma's encouraging hand on her shoulder. When she got close enough to see the baby, her eyes widened with wonder. She's beautiful, Neve breathed. Can I touch her? Gently, Thalia said, guiding Neve's small hand to Marina's tiny fist. Marina's fingers wrapped around Neve's with the same instinctive grip she'd used with her mother, and Neve's face lit up with pure joy. She likes me, Neve said. The baby likes me. Of course she does, Thalia said. You're her cousin, part of the family she'll grow up with, learn from, and love. That makes you essential, Neve. Don't ever doubt it. Paloma's eyes were bright with tears. We came to congratulate you, but we didn't mean to intrude on family time. You're not intruding, Kieran interrupted. He gestured to encompass all of them. This is what family looks like now. Not bound by old rules or political arrangements, but chosen freely. Built on love and respect, and the understanding that we're stronger together than apart. Over the next few days, as Thalia recovered and Marina began settling into life outside the womb, the pack celebrated. Not with grand ceremonies or political maneuvering, but with genuine joy at Luna's safe delivery and the Alpha King's newest heir. Wolves who'd once been skeptical of Thalia brought gifts, hand-carved toys, soft blankets, blessings whispered over the tiny pup. They saw in Marina the future of their pack, yes, but also proof that their Luna had truly chosen them. That she'd built her family here, rooted herself in Frost Peak soil, committed herself completely. They're accepting you, Kieran observed one evening as yet another delegation arrived with offerings. Not just tolerating or respecting, actually accepting you as one of their own. Because Marina makes it real, Thalia said, nursing their daughter while the summer breeze drifted through open windows. She's not just the Alpha King's heir, she's proof that I chose this life, this pack, this family. That I'm building my future here rather than just surviving the present. A messenger arrived from Emberclaw, a formal letter from Dax and Paloma congratulating them on Marina's birth and proposing that Neve's first fostering exchange begin in 3 months, once Marina was old enough to be less demanding of Thalia's attention. 3 months, Thalia said, reading the letter. That's reasonable. Stellan will be ready by then. He's been preparing himself mentally, asking questions about Emberclaw, trying to learn everything he can about their culture and customs. He'll do well, Kieran said confidently. He has your diplomatic skills and my determination. Emberclaw won't know what hit them. And Neve will thrive here, Thalia added. With 4 pups to play with, once Marina is old enough, and a whole pack to welcome her. We're really doing this, Kieran. Building the bridge between our packs through our children. Revolutionary, Kieran said, but his smile was proud. And terrifying. And exactly what needs to happen if we want a better future than the past gave us. That night, with Marina sleeping peacefully in her cradle and the mate bond humming contentedly between them, Thalia reflected on how far she'd come. A year ago, she'd been trapped in a mark that wasn't hers, living half a life, slowly dying from the conflict between duty and destiny. Now she was a mother of 4, Luna of Frost Peak, mate to an Alpha King who loved her fiercely, and architect of an alliance built on friendship rather than forced marriages. The journey had been painful, mark-breaking, political complications, wolves who doubted her, the constant work of proving herself worthy. But every difficult step had led her here, to this moment of perfect peace. Thank you, she whispered to Kieran in the darkness. For what? For being worth fighting for. For giving me a family, a home, a purpose beyond political convenience. For loving me enough to risk everything. I should be thanking you, Kieran countered. You're the one who nearly died in a blizzard, endured mark-breaking, faced down traitors, and built a life in territory that wasn't yours. All I did was claim my mate. You did more than that, Thalia said. You showed me what love could look like when it was chosen freely rather than forced. You gave me children who call me Mama without hesitation. You built a pack that accepted an outsider because you believed in me even when I doubted myself. She turned to look at him in the moonlight streaming through the window. We saved each other, she said simply. That's what mates do. Then let's keep saving each other, Kieran said, pulling her close. Every day for the rest of our lives. Deal, Thalia whispered. And as they drifted to sleep with Marina's soft breathing the soundtrack to their peace, Thalia knew with absolute certainty. She was exactly where she was meant to be. The impossible choices, the painful sacrifices, the courage to choose happiness over duty, all of it had been worth it. Because this family love home, this was everything. And she would fight to protect it, to nurture it, to ensure the next generation inherited a world where choosing love wasn't revolutionary. Just normal.
Just right.
Just the way it always should have been. Chapter 14. Full Circle. 5 years later, Thalia stood in the ceremonial chamber watching her daughter prepare for her first formal pack presentation. Marina was 5 now, all wild dark curls and stubborn determination, with Kieran's ice blue eyes and Thalia's healing gift already manifesting in small ways. She'd inherited the best of both parents, fierce protectiveness, natural leadership, and a stubborn refusal to accept impossible as an answer. "Do I have to wear a fancy dress?" Marina complained, tugging at the ceremonial gown that marked her as Alpha Heir. "It's itchy, and I can't climb trees in it." "You only have to wear it for the ceremony," Thalia said, kneeling to adjust her daughter's collar. "After that, you can change into your training clothes and climb all the trees you want." "Promise." Promise. The past 5 years had transformed Frost Peak in ways Thalia could never have imagined. The fostering exchange with Emberclaw had evolved into something much larger, a formal alliance program that saw pups from both packs spending extended time in each other's territories, building friendships that transcended old rivalries. Stellan was 11 now, poised and diplomatic beyond his years, already showing signs of the alpha he'd become. He split his time between Frost Peak and Emberclaw, equally comfortable in both territories, serving as a living bridge between the packs. Phoebe had discovered a gift for healing that rivaled Thalia's own, spending hours in the medical wing learning everything she could. At 10, she was already assisting with minor treatments, her gentle touch and intuitive understanding making her invaluable. Jasper, at 9, had become the pack's unexpected diplomat, his natural charm and ability to make anyone laugh defusing tensions before they could escalate into conflicts. He had a gift for seeing common ground where others saw only differences. And Neve, now 9 herself, was practically a permanent fixture in Frost Peak, her visits growing longer each time until she spent more time here than in Emberclaw. She and Marina were inseparable, the 5-year age difference meaning nothing in the face of their fierce bond. "Mama, is everyone going to stare at me?" Marina asked, her confidence wavering slightly. "Yes," Thalia said honestly. "Because you're important, sweetheart. You're the Alpha King's heir, born from a bond that changed everything. Wolves want to see you, want to celebrate what you represent." "What do I represent?" "Hope," Thalia said simply. "Proof that choosing love over duty creates something beautiful. You and your siblings, all of you together, you're the future we fought to build." A knock at the door announced Kieran's arrival. He looked regal in his ceremonial alpha regalia, but his expression softened immediately when he saw Marina struggling with her dress. "Having wardrobe difficulties?" he asked, scooping her up with easy strength. "It's itchy," Marina complained, but she wrapped her arms around his neck with absolute trust. "I know. Mine's itchy too," Kieran confided in a stage whisper. "But we wear uncomfortable clothes for important ceremonies because it shows respect for tradition. After, though, we can both change into something reasonable and you can show me that new climbing technique you've been practicing." "The one where I jump between trees?" "That's the one. Very impressive, though it gives your mama heart attacks." "I can't hear you," Thalia said dryly. "And yes, watching our 5-year-old leap between trees does give me heart attacks. Thank you for noticing." The ceremony was beautiful. Wolves from both Frost Peak and Emberclaw gathered to witness Marina's formal presentation as heir. Dax and Paloma attended with Neve, their presence a testament to how far the alliance had come. As Kieran presented Marina to the assembled packs, speaking of legacy and future and the bonds that transcended old rivalries, Thalia felt her throat tighten with emotion. All of this had seemed impossible 5 years ago. The idea that Frost Peak and Emberclaw could stand together in celebration rather than suspicion, that pups from both packs could grow up as friends rather than enemies, that love could triumph over political maneuvering, it had all seemed like a beautiful but unattainable dream. Yet here they were, living proof that impossible things became possible when you were brave enough to reach for them. After the ceremony, after the formal portions ended and wolves mingled freely, Thalia found herself in the gardens with Paloma, the same gardens where they'd reunited years ago. "Can you believe we're here?" Paloma asked, watching their daughters play with the other pups. "5 years ago, I was terrified to even speak to you. Thought you'd hate me for being Dax's true mate, for disappearing when you needed me." "I never hated you," Thalia said. "I was hurt, yes. Confused. But never hate. You gave us everything," Paloma said quietly. "By breaking Dax's mark, by choosing your own happiness, you freed us to do the same." Neve knows the whole story now. How you were the brave one who showed everyone it was okay to choose love over duty. "I wasn't brave," Thalia protested. "I was desperate and dying and out of options." "Same thing sometimes," Paloma said with a smile. "Bravery isn't the absence of fear, it's acting despite it. You were terrified, but you chose anyway. That's the definition of courage." Dax joined them, his expression warm and relaxed in ways Thalia had never seen during their marriage. Being with his true mate had transformed him. The weariness she remembered was gone, replaced by genuine contentment. "Luna Thalia," he said with formal courtesy that had become affectionate rather than political. "Beautiful ceremony. Marina is remarkable, strong, smart, already showing leadership qualities." "Takes after her father," Thalia said. "And her mother," Dax countered. "Don't underestimate your influence, Thalia. That child has your healing gift and your stubborn refusal to accept limitations. She's going to change the world someday." "She already has," Kieran said, appearing with Marina on his shoulders and the other pups trailing behind. "Just by existing, she proves that the new way works. That children born from chosen bonds rather than forced marriages grow up healthier, happier, stronger. All our pups prove that," Paloma added, pulling Neve close. "Look at them, Stellan bridging territories like it's natural, Phoebe healing without regard to pack affiliation, Jasper making friends everywhere he goes, Neve thriving with family in 2 territories, and Marina growing up knowing she was desperately wanted. This is what we fought for." They stood together, 2 former mates and their true partners, watching the next generation play without awareness of the barriers that had once seemed insurmountable. Later that evening, after the celebrations wound down and the pups were finally in bed, Marina insisted on sleeping in the same room as Neve despite having perfectly good chambers of her own. Thalia found herself back in the gardens with Kieran. The moon was full overhead, illuminating the territory in silver light. This place had witnessed so much of their journey. Their first conversations after the claiming, Marina's first steps, countless quiet moments stolen between leadership duties. "Do you ever think about where we'd be if you hadn't found those pups in the storm?" Kieran asked, pulling Thalia close. "Every day," Thalia admitted. "If I'd turned back like Dax ordered, if I'd left Stellan and Phoebe and Jasper to die because they were enemy pups, none of this would exist. No us, no Marina, no alliance built on love instead of politics." "The universe has a strange sense of timing," Kieran mused. "Everything had to happen exactly as it did. Your marriage to Dax, my grief over Marina's death, the storm, the avalanche, all of it, to bring us here." "I used to resent that," Thalia said. "The idea that I had to suffer for years just to reach this point. But now," she looked up at the moon, remembering the lullaby she'd sung to dying pups in a cave 5 years ago. "Now I understand that every painful step was necessary. Not because the universe is cruel, but because we had to be ready. I had to learn what I was willing to sacrifice. You had to heal enough to risk loving again. We both had to be desperate enough to choose happiness over safety." "Philosophical tonight," Kieran observed with a smile. "Marina asked me earlier what she represents," Thalia said. "And I told her hope. But she's more than that. She's proof that suffering doesn't have to be permanent, that chains can be broken, that impossible situations can be overcome if you're willing to fight for something better. She turned in Kieran's arms, meeting his ice-blue eyes, still as captivating as the first time she'd seen them. 5 years ago, I was dying in a cave, convinced I'd failed everyone who mattered. Now I'm here, surrounded by a family I chose rather than inherited, building a legacy that has nothing to do with politics and everything to do with love. If that's not proof that miracles happen, I don't know what is. You're the miracle, Kieran said fiercely. You walked into my life at my lowest point and showed me that happiness was still possible. That I could love again without betraying Marina's memory. That choosing joy wasn't selfish, it was essential. He kissed her then, deep and thorough, the mate bond blazing between them as strong as it had been the day he first claimed her. 5 years of partnership, of raising pups together, of facing challenges as a united front, all of it had only deepened their connection. I love you, Thalia whispered against his lips. Then, now, and every moment between. You're my mate, my home, my everything. And you're mine, Kieran said. The impossible she-wolf who sacrificed herself to save 3 pups who weren't hers, who broke sacred marks to claim destiny over duty, who built bridges between enemy packs through sheer stubborn determination. Don't forget the part where I nearly died multiple times, Thalia added with dry humor. How could I forget? Kieran's tone was equally dry. You're constantly giving me heart attacks with your heroic sacrifices. It's part of my charm. It's terrifying. But you love me anyway. But I love you anyway, Kieran agreed, pulling her closer. Impossibly, desperately, completely. They stood together under the moon's watchful gaze, 2 souls who'd fought impossible odds to be together, reflecting on the journey that had brought them here. The mark-breaking that had freed Thalia from duty's chains. The claiming that had bound her to love instead. The birth of Marina, proof that choosing happiness created beauty. The alliance with Emberclaw, built on friendship rather than forced marriages. The next generation grew up knowing they could choose their own paths, their own mates, their own happiness, not because politics demanded it, but because love required it. Thank you, Thalia said quietly. For what? For being brave enough to claim me when I was marked by another. For building a home where I could finally be myself. For giving me children who call me mama without hesitation. For showing me what love looks like when it's chosen freely rather than forced. Thank you, Kieran countered, for being brave enough to break the mark in the first place. For choosing me over safety. For nearly dying to save my pups and then doing it again saving Linnea. For transforming Frost Peak into something better than it was, not through force, but through example. We're quite the pair, Thalia said with a soft laugh. The best pair, Kieran agreed. Mates who chose each other against impossible odds and built something beautiful from the ashes of duty and obligation. In the distance, they heard Marina's laugh, bright and uninhibited, followed by Neve's answering giggles. The sound carried through the night air, a reminder of why everything they'd endured had been worth it. They'll never know the world we came from, Thalia said. Where forced marriages were normal, where duty mattered more than happiness, where true mates went unclaimed because politics said so. Good, Kieran said firmly. Let them grow up believing love is always the right choice. Let them think choosing happiness over duty is obvious rather than revolutionary. Let them build an even better world than the one we're giving them. You think they will? I know they will, Kieran said, because they have us as examples. They've seen what fighting for love looks like, what sacrifice in service of happiness accomplishes. They'll take what we've built and make it even stronger. Thalia leaned into Kieran's embrace, feeling the mate bond pulse warmly between them, listening to their daughter's laughter drift through the night. 5 years ago, she'd been dying in a cave, convinced she'd failed. Now she was here, alive, loved, surrounded by family she'd built through courage and sacrifice and the stubborn belief that happiness was worth any price. The journey had been impossible. The destination was worth it. And as the moon watched over Frost Peak territory, over 2 packs learning to be allies, over Pups growing up without the barriers their parents had faced, over a Luna and Alpha King who'd chosen love over everything else. Thalia knew with absolute certainty. This was exactly where she was meant to be. Not despite the impossible journey, but because of it. Every painful step, every sacrifice, every moment of doubt and fear, all of it had led her home. To Kieran, to Marina, to Stellan, Phoebe, and Jasper. To a family built on choice rather than obligation. To a pack that had accepted her not because they had to, but because she'd proven herself worthy through action. To happiness freely chosen rather than duty forcibly accepted. To love that had been worth fighting for, dying for, risking everything for.
To home.
Finally, completely, irrevocably home. And nothing, not politics or doubt or the weight of the past, could ever take that away. Because this was hers. Chosen freely, built courageously, protected fiercely. This was her life. Her family. Her forever. And it was perfect. The end. Thank you, Moonlit Souls, for joining us on Thalia and Kieran's journey. Their story reminds us that happiness isn't selfish, it's essential. That choosing love over duty isn't weakness, it's the bravest thing you can do. That family isn't just who you're born to, it's who you choose, again and again, through sacrifice and courage and unwavering devotion. May you all have the courage to choose your own happiness, to fight for your own impossible love, and to build families that matter more than politics ever could. Until the next moonrise, stay wild, stay brave, and remember, the best stories are the ones where love wins. This has been Wolf Heart Tales.